while warships were tossed aside like toys. Metal fragments flew everywhere, and in an instant, the base was transformed from a military stronghold into a hell on Earth. A colossal mushroom cloud rose up, reminiscent of a nuclear explosion. As that massive mushroom cloud began to dissipate, the image on the screen became clear again. Seeing the scene of the naval base, everyone was stunned by the sight before them. At this moment, not only the base, but even the island that once held countless military secrets and symbols of power had vanished without a trace. The location where the island once stood was now just a vast expanse of ocean. Waves continuously crashed against the empty sea surface, debris covering a large area of water. The leader stared at the scene in disbelief, rendered speechless for a long time. Soon, his legs twitched, and an unknown liquid poured from beneath him. In the flagship's command room of the naval fleet, the atmosphere gradually shifted from tense to relaxed and joyful. Although the crew bore the fatigue of having just experienced a world-shocking military operation, their faces were more filled with pride and joy from their victory. At this moment, the image switched again, and the calm yet warm figure of an elder appeared on the screen, greeting the audience nationwide. The elder stood tall like a pine tree, his eyes bright and gentle. Despite just commanding a thrilling battle, his demeanor remained composed. "Dear compatriots, Happy New Year." His voice transmitted through the live broadcast signal to every corner of the country. His greeting was like a warm spring breeze, caressing everyone's heart. Following the plan, the live broadcast switched to the Spring Festival Gala. The joyful and harmonious atmosphere at the gala stood in stark contrast to the tense naval battle just witnessed. Yet they blended together mysteriously, as if narrating the calmness and composure that the country could maintain at any time. At the Pentagon, the Secretary of State looked as if he had suffered a tremendous blow, his face pale as paper, his body swaying and nearly fainting. His eyes stared blankly at the screen, filled with a mix of anger and helplessness. They had invested hundreds of billions to build overseas bases, only to see them vanish in an instant. Meanwhile, the instigator of all this, the fleet from a certain nation, was celebrating the new year as if they had just accomplished something trivial. The high-ranking officials were feeling a wave of anxiety wash over them. Just then, the commanders of 2 aircraft carrier fleets anxiously inquired, "Mr. Secretary, should we attack the fleet from that nation as ordered?" Initially, the secretary had commanded them to strike as soon as the other side took action. However, after witnessing the naval base being obliterated in an instant by electromagnetic artillery, they had no intention of moving, fearing that any action on their part would lead to the same fate as the naval base. The secretary gazed at the imposing warships of the other nation on the screen and the now-vanished secret base, filled with fear and despair. The terrifying image of the electromagnetic beam and the massive mushroom cloud kept flashing in his mind, leaving him devoid of any confidence to continue fighting. "Retreat, retreat quickly." The secretary trembled as he issued the command, his voice hoarse and weak, as if he had exhausted all his strength. At that moment, he realized that they had suffered unprecedented humiliation, but faced with the powerful military might of the other nation, he had no choice. If they retaliated now, given the formidable defensive capabilities of the enemy's warships, they might not be able to take them all down. Moreover, their fleet possessed terrifying electromagnetic artillery that could deliver a devastating blow while sidestepping nuclear treaties. "Retreat is our only and wisest choice," the secretary explained. Of course, they could use nuclear weapons to confront the other nation directly, but they could not. If they retaliated with nuclear weapons, it would throw the world into chaos. The other nation had not violated any nuclear treaties and was striking at pirates. If they were to violate the treaties and attack, it would be an act of aggression, leading to a united response from all nuclear-capable states. It was not worth it for just 3 warships. Thus, in the name of peace, they abandoned their nuclear options. The secretary felt a sense of irony as he spoke these words. When had they ever considered peace? Wasn't that always the concern of the other nation? At this moment, the tables had turned. Upon receiving the retreat order, the aircraft carrier fleet descended into chaos. The carrier-based aircraft took off in haste, circling a few times before quickly returning to the carrier. The engines of destroyers and cruisers roared to life, sending huge waves crashing onto the surface. Soldiers were running frantically on the deck, executing various retreat commands. The entire fleet resembled a flock of startled birds fleeing in panic. On the other side, the Dragon Might was soon informed of the retreat of the other nation's fleet. The command room erupted with cheers and applause. Upon hearing the news, Old Zhao couldn't help but laugh. His hearty laughter echoed in the command room, filled with satisfaction and pride. The aircraft carrier's speed was pushed to maximum power. It seems they were genuinely frightened this time. Old Zhao smiled and said, as he spoke, he couldn't help but think of Su Chen back home. He knew that the outcome was all thanks to Su Chen. This kid had greatly boosted their morale. "Chief, should we continue the pursuit?" one of his subordinates inquired. While dealing with pirates was acceptable, pursuing their warships would essentially mean declaring war. Old Zhao's expression grew serious. He was well aware of the brutality and consequences of war. Although they had won this confrontation, he did not wish to provoke war lightly. However, they could not let the other party off easily. It was time to settle the score with those guys. Old Zhao squinted slightly, a barely noticeable cold smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. New grudges combined with old ones. This time, they absolutely could not let them off lightly. Chapter 156. Once is a coincidence, twice is something else. In the command room, all the high-ranking officials fell silent. The leader had changed his pants, his gaze coldly sweeping over them, especially towards Secretary Jack. Mr. Jack, do you have anything to say? If it weren't for your provocation, we wouldn't have lost an entire naval base. Nor would we have embarrassed ourselves in front of the world. Now, the entire blue planet knows we were beaten by the Dragon Nation and fled in disgrace. Tomorrow, at most by tomorrow, we will be scolded by those damned taxpayers. The secretary felt helpless. Initially, it was indeed his suggestion to provoke the Dragon Nation, but the leader had agreed to. Why should he bear all the blame alone? In fact, more than helplessness, he felt regret, especially regarding the naval base that had cost so much time and resources to build. It was a painful feeling. If he had known earlier, he would have just admitted it was their naval base. If they had backed down and acknowledged it at the start, this tragedy could have been avoided. Now, almost the whole world knew that the naval base was theirs, but they could not admit it. Acknowledging it before its destruction would have simply been embarrassing, but now that it was destroyed, admitting it would make them the real executioners, responsible for the loss of all personnel due to foolishness and arrogance. Even executing them all wouldn't quell the public's anger. One high-ranking official spoke up, Mr. President, the urgent task now is probably not to pursue accountability. We need to completely dissociate the naval base in the White Sea from us. Otherwise, the consequences will not simply be being scolded by the public. The room fell silent again, as if a storm was brewing. In the intelligence headquarters, a spacious office was currently shrouded in gloom, with an atmosphere as oppressive as the heavy clouds before a storm. The pale light weakly radiated from the ceiling, failing to dispel the tense atmosphere that filled the room. The head of the relevant agency, Smith, was at this moment cradling his head in his hands, his eyes filled with panic and confusion. He paced back and forth like an ant on a hot pan, frantically urging his intelligence personnel to gather information. Hurry. Find out everything about that electromagnetic cannon from the other nation. I need to know what is going on. His voice was hoarse and sharp, as if trying to tear apart the oppressive air. He knew full well that he bore an undeniable responsibility in this matter. Once, he had been full of confidence, believing he had everything under control in the intelligence world. But now, reality had dealt him a heavy blow. The electromagnetic cannon from the other nation seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, leaving no trace behind. He himself was deep into the investigation, continuously flipping through the mountain of documents piled in front of him, his hands trembling slightly from anxiety. The rustling papers mocked him mercilessly. His eyes darted quickly across the text, occasionally glancing at the footage, trying to find a clue among the blurred images and complex words that could explain how that nation suddenly possessed such a powerful weapon. However, after half a day, there was still no clue. Smith once again focused on the electromagnetic cannon. The massive barrel and the shocking scene during its launch made his heart race. His brows knitted tightly together as a familiar feeling suddenly flashed in his mind. Wait, why does this thing look a bit familiar? He muttered to himself. Then, he felt a jolt, as if he had been electrocuted. His eyes widened in terror. He then dashed toward the archive room, frantically searching through the dusty, piled-up old documents. As time passed second by second, sweat rolled down his forehead, dripping onto the yellowed papers. Finally, he found what he was looking for in a corner. When he opened that document, his hands froze suddenly, as if struck by lightning. Wasn't this the information about the electromagnetic cannon we intentionally leaked to mislead other nations over a decade ago? His eyes widened in disbelief. The images and data on that document bore a striking resemblance to the electromagnetic cannon displayed by that nation. So what exactly was going on? Did they develop it based on this information? He kept asking himself, feeling like he was trapped in an unending nightmare. He was acutely aware that the document contained numerous errors and misleading information, yet it seemed that they had found the key to break through from it, turning this nonsense into reality. Impossible, absolutely impossible. His lips trembled slightly as he spoke softly. At that moment, there happened to be another document beside him. The mecha model presented in the document made him shudder. The entire person was completely stunned. The mechas, previously manufactured by a certain country, seemed to have been built according to the blueprints they released. Those mechas, which flew flexibly in the sky and executed various high-difficulty tasks, had once greatly shocked them. At that time, they thought it was just a coincidence. But once could be a coincidence. Could 2 times also be a coincidence? Once was a coincidence, but twice felt a bit off. A trace of fear revealed itself in his eyes. He began to reflect on all his past decisions and actions, feeling that his approach seemed foolish. In the repeated intelligence games and technological competitions, he had thought he was manipulating his opponents. But he didn't realize he was pushing himself step by step towards the abyss. In the next moment, his pupils dilated. He suddenly jumped up from the pile of documents. The terror in his eyes was about to overflow. It was because he suddenly thought of the aerospace mothership. This is bad, he silently exclaimed in his heart, and hurriedly ran towards the communication room, wanting to stop everyone from leaking the information about the aerospace mothership. His steps were unsteady, almost causing him to fall in the corridor. However, when he burst into the communication room, he heard the desperate report from his subordinate. Boss, it's too late. The information has already been cleverly delivered to the other country. Boom. In an instant, Smith felt as if thunder had erupted in his mind. It made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His body began to tremble involuntarily. That country couldn't possibly build an aerospace mothership too? Could they? Chapter 157, Crazy Profits. On the other side of the White Sea, a certain country was now plunged into extreme panic. The high-ranking officials of this country learned that a secret base had been destroyed and that the other country might come to settle accounts with them, making them all feel like they were sitting on pins and needles. They had originally thought that with support from a certain country, they could do as they pleased. But now they realized the severity of their mistakes. The naval fleet of the other country began to adjust its course, slowly heading towards the relevant maritime areas of the certain country. On the sea surface, sunlight shone on the majestic body of the warship, reflecting dazzling light. The warship's flag flew high in the sea breeze, as if proclaiming that the revenge from the other country was imminent. Old Zhao stood on the command platform, his gaze resolutely fixed ahead. As the fleet gradually approached, the atmosphere within the certain country became increasingly tense. Citizens flooded into the streets, protesting against the government's reckless actions. Meanwhile, the government was frantically seeking countermeasures, attempting to ease the tension with the other country through diplomatic means. But it all seemed too late. The wrath of the other country was about to descend, and the certain country would have to pay for its actions. The king of the certain country sat slumped in a large chair like a lifeless statue. His face still bore the lingering shock and confusion. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes were hollow. It was as if his soul had left his body, and the air around him seemed to have solidified. The secretary, anxious and hurried, walked briskly, the sound of polished shoes echoing on the smooth floor. Sweat beads covered his forehead, his face as pale as paper. He hurriedly ran to the king, reporting the shocking events that had just occurred. The king's fleet had already left. Upon hearing this news, the king felt a buzzing in his head, as if a heavy hammer had struck him. His eyes were vacant as he stared blankly ahead, mouth slightly agape, unable to speak for a long moment. He had originally hoped for the support of a powerful military force, but now felt like a lone boat abandoned in a dark abyss. His mind went blank, and his body involuntarily trembled slightly. They ran away? They just left like that? What do we do now? It was them who suggested setting up obstacles for the neighboring country. Now they just walk away, leaving us to deal with the aftermath? The king was completely stunned. At that moment, he received news that a large-scale protest had erupted in the country. The citizens demanded accountability for his reckless actions. Otherwise, they would march all the way to the royal palace to demonstrate. Chaos was unfolding both domestically and internationally. Enraged, the king slammed his fist on the table, causing tea to spill onto the floor. Where is Andre? Execute him. His death is the only way to quell the public anger. Now, he could only drag Andre out to appease the people's fury. As for how to calm the neighboring country's anger, it depended on their appetite. Soon, he received an invitation from the fleet. With a heavy heart, he felt as if he were dragging a massive stone, making his way to the boarding area step by step. Along the way, his heartbeat was like a rapid drumbeat, cold sweat soaking through his clothes. The sea breeze howled past him, but it could not cool his heated mind. At that moment, he felt a sense of being a king on the brink of losing his nation. This was a feeling he had never experienced in his life. As he boarded the ship and walked down the long corridor to the meeting room, every step felt like he was stepping on his own heart. Finally, when he saw the senior officer, he instinctively bent his waist, his face filled with a flattering yet sincere smile. However, the fear and unease in his heart could not be hidden. His hands fidgeted unconsciously, his lips quivering slightly, as he hurriedly and sincerely acknowledged his mistake. Respected General, I apologize for the troubles caused to your country by our staff's errors. We deeply recognize our mistakes. His voice trembled, and the words flowed out like beans from a bamboo tube, echoing in the silent room. However, these words did not ease the senior officer's mood. They did not truly understand their mistake. They only knew they were in danger. Seeing that the other party remained unmoved, the king's attitude became even more sincere. To appease the neighboring country's anger, he racked his brain for various compensation measures, urgently stating, "We are willing to bear all the costs of the fleet's outing and promise to escort your warships back free of charge. At the same time, our country is willing to immediately sign a friendly trade agreement with the neighboring nation and publicly apologize to them in order to mitigate the adverse effects caused by this incident." His eyes were filled with pleading, hoping to see a hint of leniency on the face of the elder statesman. The elder remained calm, his gaze deep and authoritative, resembling a towering mountain, making it impossible to discern his inner thoughts. After a brief moment of contemplation, he slowly spoke. "We have 2 warships purchased from a certain country, and I have noticed that your navy is quite weak. How about we sell these 2 warships to you for $20 billion? Upon hearing this price, the king of the neighboring nation felt a sharp pang in his heart, as if gripped by an invisible hand. He knew that the cost price of these 2 warships was only $2 billion, and this price was undoubtedly a severe extortion, especially since the neighboring nation appeared to be acting out of goodwill, claiming concern for their navy as the reason for the sale. Despite his internal reluctance, he could not show any dissatisfaction on his face and could only force a smile, while his heart bled. He silently lamented but understood that he had no room for bargaining at this moment. The elder slightly raised his chin, his gaze piercing, and continued, "Additionally, you will need to compensate for the fleet's deployment costs at $30 billion, plus the $20 billion for the 2 warships. $50 billion must be paid, and the fleet will withdraw immediately." The king's face turned ashen, like dead ashes. His lips trembled, wanting to say something but swallowing it back. $50 billion. This was a staggering sum, a heavy burden for the neighboring nation. However, looking at the elder's resolute eyes and recalling the powerful electromagnetic cannons of the neighboring nation, he once again conceded. There was no choice but to concede. One shot had destroyed a naval base, and if 3 warships opened fire, their nation could face the risk of annihilation. The neighboring nation had transformed dramatically. The 2 strongest fleets of a certain country, with dozens of warships, could only flee before the mere 3 warships of the neighboring nation. In other words, today, the neighboring nation seemed to be the true leader of the world. What could they do against such a leader? After realizing this, the king of the neighboring nation struggled to swallow, as if summoning all his strength to say, "All right, General Zhao, we completely agree to your country's terms." His voice was weak and hoarse, filled with helplessness and submission. He knew that refusing at this moment would lead to even more severe consequences for his nation. In this confrontation, his nation had suffered a crushing defeat, and they could only obediently offer a substantial sum of money in exchange for the neighboring nation's understanding and the withdrawal of their formidable fleet. All of this felt like a nightmare, making the king deeply aware of how foolish it was to provoke the neighboring nation. His eyes shifted slightly as he thought for a moment and added, "Moreover, I believe that your country purchasing those 2 warships will surely serve a great purpose. Addressing your urgent needs is the priority. You can take the warships for now and return them to us when you no longer need them." The king of the neighboring nation continued. Hearing this, Zhao Yong couldn't help but laugh. He looked the king of the neighboring country up and down and thought to himself, at least he knows what's appropriate. Chapter 158. Are you planning to build a space carrier? In a high-tech and mysterious laboratory in the Dragon Country's revival building, the lights were as bright as day, and various precision instruments flickered with a soft glow, emitting a faint, buzzing sound. Su Chun, dressed in a white lab coat, was intensely focused on the data screen in front of him, his fingers flying over the keyboard as lines of code rapidly flashed by. Suddenly, the door to the lab was gently pushed open, and Lu Qingji appeared at the entrance. He seemed a bit hurried, with a hint of confusion and hesitation in his eyes. Clutching a briefcase tightly in his hand, he walked straight towards Su Chun. "Su Chun, here is some information for you," Lu Qingji said, his voice carrying a hint of fatigue. Su Chun frowned slightly, sensing something unusual in Lu Qingji's tone. He stopped what he was doing and turned around. "Old Lu, what's wrong? You look like something's bothering you. Is there an issue with this information?" he asked, puzzled. For Su Chun, receiving data was a significant boon. The construction of the nuclear fusion power network was nearing completion, and he was worried about what to manufacture next. He hadn't expected Lu Qingji to bring him another blueprint. But judging by Lu Qingji's demeanor, something seemed off. Lu Qingji found a seat and sat down with a wry smile. "I have a feeling we've been misled this time." Su Chun was taken aback, stopping his work again and sitting across from Lu Qingji, even more puzzled. Lu Qingji opened the briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents, handing them to Su Chun. As Su Chun's gaze landed on the blueprints, he was immediately stunned. His hands flipped through the documents at an increasingly rapid pace, and the shock in his eyes was hard to contain. Lu Qingji was equally taken aback. It was the first time he had seen such an expression of astonishment on Su Chun's face. After a long moment, Su Chun finally exhaled deeply and said in disbelief, "These are blueprints for a space carrier. Are they really preparing to develop a space carrier again?" Su Chun's heart raced, and his shock was evident. The space carrier was a fantastic technology that only existed in the realm of science fiction. It was a super battleship capable of traversing freely between the sky and outer space. Its shape resembled a massive floating island, usually several thousand meters long, with a broad and enormous hull akin to a steel city in the sky. Its exterior was made of highly advanced alloy materials, which not only had exceptional strength to withstand powerful external impacts, but also possessed outstanding high-temperature and radiation-resistant properties. In terms of its power system, advanced anti-gravity engines allowed it to easily escape the gravitational pull of its home planet, soaring like a mythical beast in the sky. Additionally, it was equipped with a powerful nuclear fusion power device, providing a continuous energy supply for long-distance voyages in the universe. The weapon system of the space carrier is truly astonishing. It is equipped with various advanced laser weapons, electromagnetic cannons, and missile launch systems, capable of precise strikes on targets. Whether they are enemy aircraft in the sky or meteors in space, all of which can be easily destroyed. Moreover, it has powerful defensive shields that can withstand various attacks. This is essentially a space fortress ready to conquer the universe. When used in conjunction with space mechs, battling in space is no longer a dream. This is undoubtedly a groundbreaking technology that can usher humanity into the cosmic era. Su Chun couldn't wait any longer. He immediately activated the system and began scanning the blueprint. A mechanical synthesized voice echoed in his ear, detected that the host recognized a concept blueprint of a space carrier. Starting decompilation. Warning: decompilation failed. The system begins to call upon technologies from the system library for autonomous compilation. Compilation progress: 1, 2, 3. Compilation progress: 100. Compilation successful. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the complete manufacturing blueprint of the space carrier. As the system's voice faded, Su Chun felt an influx of advanced technologies flooding into his mind. Compared to the previous comfort, this time his head felt heavy, mainly because the knowledge involved was too vast and complex. His mind felt like it was about to overflow. After a few minutes, once Su Chun had digested all this knowledge, the discomfort disappeared. Meanwhile, inside the system space, a complete holographic image of the space carrier appeared. Its shape resembled a massive platform floating in the air, surrounded by various energy fields and protective devices. The central disk is several kilometers in diameter, with smooth curves and a thick center to house core equipment. The main structure of the carrier is made of high-strength nanomaterials, which are both lightweight and sturdy. Its surface is coated with special nano-absorbent and intelligent reflective materials, allowing it to adapt to the environment, extending several kilometers back in a streamlined shape. The carrier is filled with various advanced devices and weapons, such as laser cannons and electromagnetic guns, capable of conducting long-range strikes against enemies. At the same time, the carrier also features a large hangar and runway, capable of accommodating numerous fighter jets and aircraft, forming a powerful aerial combat force. Looking at the high-tech holographic image before him, Su Chen couldn't help but reach out to touch it. After digesting that knowledge, Su Chen realized that the most crucial component for building the space carrier is its core part, the anti-gravity engine. In the aerospace field, spacecraft equipped with anti-gravity engines can easily escape the constraints of Earth's gravity, significantly reducing the fuel required for launch. This greatly increases the effective payload of the spacecraft, allowing it to carry more scientific instruments, equipment, and astronauts into space. At the same time, it enables more flexible adjustments to flight attitudes and orbital changes, greatly shortening interstellar travel time. Coming back to reality, Su Chen recalled Lu Qingji's earlier words. "Old Lu, what do you mean by saying we might have been misled?" Lu Qingji shrugged and pointed to the blueprint, saying solemnly, "This is a space carrier." Previously, their concept blueprints, while absurd, weren't too exaggerated. However, when it came to this space carrier, he clicked his tongue. "We've analyzed it, and it seems like it's intentionally released to mislead us. The goal is to make us waste a lot of resources, only to end up unable to produce anything. Just wasting resources." Su Chen was momentarily taken aback. "What you said makes a lot of sense." Lu Qingji responded, "You think so too? What should we do with this blueprint? Should we just throw it away?" Su Chen quickly intervened. "Why throw it away? I already have an idea." Lu Qingji was astonished. "What idea?" Su Chen calmly replied, "The idea of building a space carrier." Lu Qingji, "You want to build a space carrier?" Chapter 159. The fleet has mysteriously vanished. In fact, Lu Qingji's purpose for coming here was to confirm whether this information could genuinely lead to the construction of a complete space carrier. This was to determine if they were being misled. Just as it happened, Su Chen was very interested in this kind of information. What he didn't expect was that Su Chen actually had the idea of building a space carrier. This really shocked him. A space carrier is equivalent to an aircraft carrier, a future warship capable of roaming in space. If Su Chen could build it, the whole world would probably go crazy, especially since Su Chen never boasted. And whatever he had said before, no matter how crazy, had all become reality. If they truly built a space carrier, Lu Qingji couldn't even imagine what a spectacular scene that would be. It seemed that Su Chen had realized Lu Qingji's purpose for visiting him. Holding the blueprint, he scrutinized it and said, "Relying solely on this information, it's impossible to build a space carrier. They might be misleading us." Su Chen had been paying attention to the conflicts in the White Sea region recently, while also observing the previous performance of the entity in question during those conflicts, and found that the reality was somewhat different from his expectations. It seemed he had overestimated them, or perhaps he had been misled. When he first saw the blueprints released, Su Chen thought they had actually manufactured those weapons. But if they had been manufactured, why hadn't they used them in the numerous conflicts against the Dragon Country? Or did they not have them at all, and those blueprints were just meant to intimidate? Moreover, every time the system scanned the blueprints, it failed after decompiling. Why did it fail? Because those blueprints were completely unusable. They were fake. Especially since they even claimed to have a space carrier. This was absurd. You don't even have mechs, yet you tell me you want to build a space carrier. Su Chen hadn't paid much attention before, but now he realized. Most of those were likely just to mislead people. It was a shame he had been so anxious, fearing he would fall behind. Now looking back, he found that his own country was already far ahead. Of course, these are still his speculations, and they are almost confirmed, but just in case something unexpected happens. It's hard to say. Su Chen also didn't dare to be too careless. He continued to explain, however, regardless of whether they can produce it or not, we can start our own manufacturing. Upon receiving Su Chen's affirmative response, Lu Qingji was taken aback, then tightly grasped Su Chen's hand. "Kid, if you really can make it, our nation will no longer just be a simple empire on this planet. We would be called a cosmic empire. Just let me know what help you need, and I will go speak with the higher-ups about your ideas right now. I'll pave the way for you." With that, he hurriedly walked out. "Kid, see you later." Waving his hand, Lu Qingji disappeared from Su Chen's sight. Watching him leave in such a hurry, Su Chen couldn't help but smile. He took another look at the materials in his hand and noticed a logo. The source of this material turned out to be an intelligence agency. Thinking back to the previous materials that seemed to have come from this agency, Su Chen couldn't help but feel pleased. They are really generous, always sending me good stuff. Especially this agency. They are truly good people. He put away the materials, and at that moment, his phone suddenly rang. Upon answering, he found it was Zhao Yong. As soon as the call connected, the serious tone from before was replaced by excitement, almost like a child. "Xiao Su, have you been following the White Sea incident? Thanks to the 3 strategic vessels you built, they were not only scared away, but the neighboring country also backed down. The 2 warships we bought from the Bears cost us $20 million, and we sold them for $2 billion. Even then, they didn't dare to take them, paid us, and still sent the warships back. Plus, there's another $3 billion in compensation. We made a profit of $50 billion from this voyage. What a huge gain. This really lets us vent our frustrations. Zhao Yong wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth, looking quite pleased. Su Chun was also very happy to hear this news. He knew about scaring them away, but didn't he know that the neighboring country actually compensated them 50 billion? Back when they purchased the Variag, they had caused trouble. Recently, they had also acted as pawns for others to bully them. Now, with new grudges and old debts settled, it's all accounted for. Zhao Lao's voice carried a sense of relief. Xiao Su, the fleet is about to return, and this voyage will provide you with crucial test data for your future research. All right, Zhao Lao. Su Chun nodded slightly, quickly thinking of some new ideas in his mind. Just as Zhao Lao was about to hang up, Su Chun hurriedly said, "By the way, Zhao Lao, I would like to meet with you, as I have some new ideas to discuss." Without hesitation, Zhao Lao agreed. "Of course, no problem. I'll have someone prepare some food and drinks. I'm happy. And we can chat while enjoying it. I'll tell you how the neighboring country's king was scared out of his wits." Laughter echoed from the other end of the phone. After exchanging a few more words, Su Chun hung up. Subsequently, Zhao Lao quickly directed the fleet to return. On the morning sea, thick fog enveloped the surface. With the command issued, the fleet activated its optical stealth system. In an instant, the massive fleet seemed to merge into the air, vanishing without a trace. Along the shores of the White Sea Strait, a crowd of people gathered. Journalists from various countries had set up their cameras, anxiously waiting for the fog to lift, eager to capture the breathtaking sight of the fleet. The sea breeze gently blew, carrying a hint of saltiness, while the fog drifted like a light veil. As time passed, the fog gradually dissipated, revealing the vast, undulating sea. However, soon after, the journalists widened their eyes in disbelief as they observed the sea. They discovered that the fleet, which should have been right in front of them, had completely vanished. Only the gently rising waves remained, as if narrating the mysterious event that had just occurred. Not only the journalists, but as the fog cleared, the eyes of the world were focused here, ready to witness the fleet's grandeur before its return. Yet, like the journalists, they were all left dumbfounded. The fleet had seemingly disappeared into thin air. Chapter 160, A Certain Power Acknowledges Defeat. In a solemn and austere conference room, the harsh white light illuminated the serious and anxious faces of the high-ranking officials. On either side of the large table, officials sat upright, the air thick with tension and unease. The Prime Minister clasped his hands, furrowing his brow, his eyes revealing deep concern. The formidable strength displayed by the fleet had shattered the existing balance of international relations, leaving them all in fear. "We must reassess our relationship with this powerful entity. Their military capabilities have reached a level we cannot ignore." The Prime Minister's heavy voice echoed in the conference room, marking the beginning of this emergency meeting. At that moment, however, the Minister of the Navy, with a grim expression, raised his hand, signaling that he had something to say. "Before we start this meeting, I would like you all to watch a video." His hands trembled slightly as he operated the equipment. The large screen in the conference room then displayed a video that captured everyone's attention. The footage showed a scene they had seen before. On the turbulent surface of the White Sea, shells streaked across the sky like meteors, and explosions erupted, easily destroying an island. The familiar trajectory of the shells and the images of the explosions caused everyone present to frown. Then, another video appeared before their eyes. This one captured by satellites in the southern waters, showing the destruction of their fleet. In the sky, the same trajectory and explosion images appeared. At that moment, they finally understood what the Minister of the Navy meant. They couldn't help but gasp in shock. The Minister of the Navy's voice rang out again. "The images of the shells that attacked our fleet bear a startling resemblance to the situation encountered earlier. After analysis and comparison, I have reason to speculate that our fleet was most likely destroyed by a certain country." The voice of the Minister of the Navy carried a hint of anger and reluctance. Upon hearing this, the Prime Minister's face turned pale instantly. "This is unbelievable. It really was the work of that country. They lost an entire fleet, which is undoubtedly a heavy blow for their nation. The naval strength they once took pride in is now reduced to half, and the security of their maritime defense has become precarious. And the instigator of all this is none other than that country. They had suspected a neighboring nation and even considered other powers, but they never suspected that country, because, in their view, the naval strength of that country could not be so formidable. Now it seems they were wrong, and grossly so." The conference room fell into a deep silence. After learning it was that country, the officials exchanged glances but dared not speak easily. After a long while, an elderly official broke the silence. "Prime Minister, should we take action against that country? We cannot just sit idly by." The Prime Minister rubbed his temples and sighed deeply. "Take action? It's easier said than done. The strength of that country is unfathomable. If we rashly turn against them, the consequences would be unimaginable." Everyone nodded, understanding that without absolute certainty, confronting that country would undoubtedly be seeking their own demise. Those terrifying warships that could bypass nuclear treaties. Once they arrive at their shores, no matter how many ships they send, it wouldn't be enough to withstand the threat. The Minister of Foreign Affairs cautiously proposed his suggestion. "For now, we can only observe the stance of our allies. Their military strength and influence surpass ours, and as our ally, if they decide to take sanction actions against that country, we might follow suit, seeking revenge and even gaining some benefits." The Prime Minister nodded slightly in agreement. Just as everyone was discussing, a piece of news arrived. The fleet of that country has disappeared. An intelligence officer hurriedly knocked on the conference room door. "Prime Minister, We have once again underestimated the might of that country's fleet. This is the latest information we have obtained regarding their warships. Please watch this video before making any decisions about that country. With that, he quickly uploaded the latest data onto the conference room computer. Soon after, another video appeared before them. The senior officials present knew that it showed the sea where those warships were docked. The heavy weaponry seemed to cloak the three strategic ships in a layer of mystery, making them appear even more formidable, like three sea monsters. Just as the senior officials were puzzled about what the intelligence office was trying to convey, they suddenly froze. Then they rubbed their eyes. They discovered that amidst the thick fog, the warships seemed to have vanished into thin air. The once visible hulls appeared to be completely obscured by the fog, disappearing from sight. They tried to convince themselves that it must be the fog that had completely covered the warships. Therefore, they couldn't see the silhouettes of the ships clearly. As long as they waited for the fog to clear, these warships would definitely reappear before their eyes. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain how these ships vanished. At this moment, the head of the intelligence department adjusted the progress bar, just as the fog was about to dissipate. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the screen. When the fog finally cleared, the scene revealed an empty sea surface, and the conference room erupted in an uproar. Disappeared? Not just obscured by fog, but the three warships of the nation truly vanished into thin air? How could this be possible? What on earth is going on? In such a short time, no matter how fast the warships were, it was impossible for them to just disappear, unless they had developed advanced stealth technology. Oh my, stealthy warships. Does this mean that such ships, with terrifying destructive power, could approach our shores without us noticing, allowing them to carry out unilateral massacres against us? The warships from that nation are too frightening, completely unsolvable for us. The Prime Minister's eyes widened, and he immediately ordered, "Hurry up and find out what happened. Quick, investigate." The last sentence was almost shouted out. The officials hurriedly got busy, making calls, checking data, trying to find the specific reason for the disappearance of the fleet. The Prime Minister paced anxiously in the conference room, waiting for the investigation results. However, just waiting like this wasn't effective. He had someone contact relevant parties to inquire about their views on the matter, but instead of a response, they received a public statement from those parties. This statement shocked everyone. The emergence of a powerful pirate force in the White Sea is our negligence. We apologize for not clarifying the reasons behind the previous near conflict with that nation. We firmly uphold peace in all regions of the world and encourage countries to work together to combat piracy. A long statement with no hint of sanctions against that nation. Instead, it acknowledged their actions against pirates. Damn it. Are they really fighting pirates? ISNT at your naval base? Are you pretending to be ignorant? Upon learning this news, the top officials were completely stunned. So, after one of their bases was destroyed, they didn't dare to say a word? Chapter 161. Everything must be based on the bigger picture. Just a short while ago, in a solemn and serious meeting room at the Pentagon, the dim lights couldn't hide the tense atmosphere. The Secretary of State leaned forward with both hands on the large conference table, seriously explaining his thoughts to the President. "Mr. President, I believe it is time for us to take action against that nation. Their military development has now seriously threatened our international standing. If we don't do something soon, we will lose our dominance on this planet, and our position will be replaced by that nation. By the time that happens, it will be too late." The high-ranking officials in the audience looked somewhat tense. The recent turmoil in the region has just passed, and they are still reeling from the shock brought by the Dragon Nation. The strength displayed by the Dragon Nation during this incident has left them feeling somewhat panicked. For a moment, they felt lost and directionless. At this moment, Biden rested his head in his hands, deeply troubled. "Jack, I certainly know we need to take action. But you've seen it too. The military capabilities of the Dragon Nation are now far beyond what they used to be. We could barely match them with our advanced weaponry before, but now their weapons are many times more advanced than ours. How do you expect us to act?" At this point, Biden recalled that the recent turmoil was a result of the Secretary of State insisting on taking action, leading to such an outcome. Now he wants to act again. He feared it would end up being a self-inflicted wound. "Mr. President, listen to me. I certainly won't be foolish enough to use military means to confront the Dragon Nation head-on," the Secretary of State said. "I believe we can start by influencing public opinion, guiding international sentiment to put the Dragon Nation in a difficult position, and then look for the right moment to impose sanctions." The Secretary's eyes revealed determination and confidence, as if everything was under his control. The President sat in his chair, hands crossed over his chest, slightly frowning as he contemplated the Secretary's proposal. He knew well that the relationship with the Dragon Nation has always been complex, and any decision could trigger a series of chain reactions. Are you sure this is wise? The influence of the Dragon Nation in the international arena cannot be underestimated. Acting rashly might lead to unforeseen consequences. The President's voice was deep and steady. The Secretary straightened his back and raised his voice. "Mr. President, we have a strong capability to manipulate public opinion. As long as we plan carefully, we can certainly put the Dragon Nation in a passive position. Moreover, while their naval power is formidable, their overall strength is not on par with ours. Our military power remains the strongest in the world. The Dragon Nation would not easily confront us directly. Otherwise, do you think our aircraft carrier fleet could have retreated so easily?" As he spoke, he picked up his briefcase, which contained a declaration of battle he had prepared to boost morale. However, just as he was about to read it, the Director of Intelligence, Smith, hurried into the conference room and whispered a few words in the President's ear. The president's expression changed slightly. Then he looked at the Secretary of State and said slowly, "Wait a moment. Before we decide whether to take action, let us hear the latest intelligence that Smith has for us." The secretary was momentarily taken aback, glancing at Smith, who appeared unusually grave. It seemed something bad had happened. As Smith presented a video on the large screen in the conference room, the previously visible warships of the Dragon Nation vanished with the dispersing sea fog. This sudden scene startled everyone present. The level of shock was akin to performing a magic trick in front of the entire world. The conference room, once filled with passionate discussions, fell silent in an instant, leaving only the faint hum of the air conditioning. After a long pause, the voice of the Secretary of State slowly emerged. Did the fleet from that nation really just disappear? As he finished speaking, everyone present snapped back to reality. The room erupted in an uproar. Gone. Really gone. Was this some kind of joke? How could 3 warships just vanish into thin air? Goodness. What kind of technology has that nation invented to make 3 warships disappear? Stealth technology? Or perhaps some sort of space-time jump technology? This is outrageous. The innovations are getting more and more impressive. I suggest we just bow down and submit to that nation. A wave of unease surged within the Secretary of State at the thought of a fleet that could appear and disappear at will. His previous plans suddenly seemed full of holes. He slowly sat back down, falling silent. The president broke the silence, his tone laced with concern. If that nation's fleet can indeed operate so stealthily, what if they launched a surprise attack near us? Would our defense systems be able to cope? Cold sweat broke out on the Secretary of State's forehead, fully aware of the power of that nation's electromagnetic cannon. According to data provided by experts, their effective strike range is about 4,000 kilometers. This means if their fleet attacks from outside this range, we could suffer significant damage without even realizing it. Our naval bases are spread out, but this also makes defense more challenging. If that nation's fleet were to launch a sudden attack, our fleet, military facilities, and coastal cities would all face immense threats. A naval officer stepped forward, his expression grave, eyes filled with worry. The Secretary of State quietly put away the prepared battle declaration. It's better not to fight. Goodness, self-preservation is already a problem. He knew that without fully understanding the true strength of that nation's fleet, it would be best to keep this declaration to himself. Otherwise, it would not only fail to boost morale, but might also become a laughingstock. It seems we need to reassess our relationship with that nation. We cannot proceed with the original plan. Especially regarding the secret base in the White Sea, we must completely distance ourselves from it. The president stated firmly. The Secretary of State felt an intense resistance to this decision. How could the once mighty ruler of this planet become so humble? But there was no choice. Even resistance would be futile. Everything must be prioritized for the greater good. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. He nodded and secretly discarded the battle declaration he had prepared. He knew it was now useless. They had to prepare to back down. They then drafted a statement. Title: Combating Piracy. National Responsibility. Chapter 162, Million-Ton Class Warship. In the southern waters of that nation, along the long coastline, sunlight sparkled on the shimmering sea. A fleet slowly approached the port. The sea breeze gently caresses, and the flags flutter as the elder Zhao stands at the bow of the flagship, his gaze filled with anticipation. In the distance, Su Chen has long been waiting at the dock. His figure stands tall and confident, quietly awaiting the return of the warship. As the fleet gradually approaches the shore, Elder Zhao eagerly disembarks and strides towards Su Chen. Before Su Chen can speak, Elder Zhao impatiently asks, "Little Su, how are things with the new ship? Tell me all about it." In their previous discussions, Su Chen had shared his ideas about the new ship with Zhao Yong. In his vision, the new ship, soon to be manufactured, is filled with advanced technology, and its strategic significance far surpasses that of the existing strategic vessels. It represents a leap from the marine domain to the cosmos, expanding the scope immensely. However, Su Chen did not share too much with Elder Zhao, only briefly mentioning the new ship's concept and its great strategic importance. Upon learning that Su Chen was going to build a new ship that was even more powerful than the current strategic vessels, Zhao Yong could hardly contain his excited trembling heart. He urged his subordinates to push the power of the existing strategic vessels to the maximum and hurried back to base. He even began inquiring about the new ship as soon as he disembarked. His eyes sparkled with excitement and anticipation, as if he could already see the new ship's grandeur. Su Chen nodded slightly, wearing a confident smile, and said, "Elder Zhao, let's chat while we walk." With that, he cleared a path and walked alongside Zhao Yong towards the shipyard. "During your return journey, I have further refined the concept for the new ship. I also discovered some critical construction issues that need urgent resolution." Zhao Yong quickly responded, "Whatever problems you have, just mention them. As long as the new ship can be built, I'm willing to risk everything." Su Chen chuckled, "That's not necessary. First of all, the shipyard needs to undergo renovations and upgrades." He glanced at the Longhang shipyard beneath their feet, which had already doubled in size due to the manufacturing needs of the strategic vessels, now becoming the largest shipyard in the nation. However, the Longhang shipyard must continue to expand. Elder Zhao was slightly taken aback after hearing this, looking around the vast shipyard. Inside the yard, various equipment stood tall, with massive docks and gantry cranes showcasing its scale. "Isn't this big enough?" Zhao Yong asked in confusion. Su Chen smiled and shook his head, saying, "While it's already quite large, it still falls short for the manufacturing of the new ship." Elder Zhao was completely stunned. Goodness. Just how big is the new ship Suchin wants to build? It should be noted that the current scale of the Longhang shipyard already meets the manufacturing requirements for warships with a displacement of 100,000 tons. Even the largest aircraft carriers are about this size. Yet this still does not meet the needs for the new ship. Thinking of this, he silently swallowed hard and asked, "Little Su, give me an idea, just how big is this new ship going to be?" "It can't be." He raised two thumbs. "It can't be 20,000 tons, right?" Suchin didn't beat around the bush with Zhao Yong, raising a finger and said, "Old Zhao, the new ship's tonnage is about 1 million tons. "What? 1 million tons?" Looking at the fingers Suchin had raised, old Zhao's eyes widened, his mouth slightly agape, and he was completely stunned. An unimaginably huge ship appeared in his mind, and after a long while, he finally regained his composure. 1 million tons? How is that possible? Old Zhao's voice trembled. 1 million tons is equivalent to the size of 10 strategic ships combined. It could be said to be the presence of a small island. He looked again at Suchin's determined gaze, realizing that this kid wasn't joking. He was serious. In fact, Zhao Yong had already mentally prepared for this. Every time Suchin's ideas were beyond expectation. Even if Suchin really planned to build a super battleship of 200,000 tons this time, he wouldn't be too surprised. After all, this was Suchin. However, he still underestimated Suchin. A 200,000-ton battleship was beneath Suchin's consideration. This time, he was prepared to manufacture a battleship of 1 million tons. Zhao Yong felt a surge of excitement coursing through him. Just thinking that this concept was proposed by Suchin made him tremble with excitement. This was Suchin. No matter how exaggerated the idea, he could bring it to life. Of course, because this idea was too outrageous, Zhao Yong still felt a bit uncertain, so he tentatively asked, "Can this really be built?" Seeing old Zhao's shocked expression, Suchin firmly said, "Old Zhao, I know this is astonishing, but I am confident we can accomplish it. As long as we follow the plan, it can definitely be realized." Old Zhao pondered for a moment, recalling the miracles Suchin had created in the past, as well as the outstanding performance of those advanced battleships on the battlefield, which stirred a sense of ambition within him. "All right, Xiao Su, since you are so confident, I will fully support you." Old Zhao tightly grasped Suchin's hand, his eyes filled with trust. After that, Suchin began to inspect the shipyard. As he walked, he carefully observed the various facilities within the shipyard, constantly brainstorming the construction plan for the new ship. Old Zhao followed closely behind, occasionally asking questions. When Suchin reached a large dry dock, he stopped, looked up at the roof of the shipyard, and said to Old Zhao, "Old Zhao, have someone take down this roof." "But the framework of the shipyard doesn't need to be touched." Old Zhao looked puzzled and asked in confusion, "If the framework remains, how will the ship get out? It can't just fly out, can it?" Suchin raised his finger towards the sky and smiled, saying, "Indeed, it will fly out." Old Zhao followed Suchin's pointing direction, his eyes instantly widening again, with a look of shock on his face. "Fly out? So your 1 million-ton battleship is going to be a flying battleship?" His voice was filled with disbelief. Suchin nodded and began to elaborate on his ideas in detail. "Old Zhao, by utilizing some of our existing advanced technologies, along with my design optimizations for the new ship, we can completely enable warships to have flight capabilities. This would not only change our combat methods, but also provide a greater strategic advantage." As Zhao listened to Suchin's explanation, his initial shock gradually transformed into excitement. With the Longwei-class strategic ship as a powerful weapon in the maritime domain, if we could create a warship at the million-ton level in the aerial domain, oh my god, I might actually get to witness history. Chapter 163, the aerospace aircraft carrier begins construction. The more Zhao Yong thought about it, the more it seemed like science fiction. After all, Zhao Yong was already over 60 and could be Suchin's grandfather. People born in that era had witnessed the rise of their nation. But the speed of this rise was still within his understanding. However, with Suchin's emergence, he found it increasingly incomprehensible. First, there were flying individual combat mechs, then space mechs capable of entering outer space. And now there were super warships weighing over 100,000 tons with stealth capabilities and destructive power comparable to nuclear weapons. This had completely exceeded his comprehension. Now, Suchin was preparing to manufacture a warship at the million-ton level. Zhao Yong couldn't understand. How can something so heavy fly? Even if you put it in water, it probably wouldn't float unless it's in deep sea. Faced with Zhao's repeated questioning, Suchin realized that the old man was interested in the new ship, so he decided to clarify. "Old Zhao, I am preparing to create an aerospace aircraft carrier. You may not know this, but the aerospace aircraft carrier." Suchin was about to explain the aerospace aircraft carrier in detail, but before he could elaborate, he was interrupted by Zhao Yong's surprised voice. "An aerospace aircraft carrier? You want to create an aerospace aircraft carrier? No wonder, no wonder." Suchin was slightly taken aback. "You know about aerospace aircraft carriers?" Zhao Yong replied, "Of course. Do you think I know nothing? Although the aerospace aircraft carrier is just a conceptual thing, I happen to know a bit about it. What you may not know is that our nation once planned to launch a manufacturing project called Nanshanmen, which included many conceptual technological weapons, including the aerospace aircraft carrier. I heard about it back then. However, to realize this Nanshanmen project would take at least 100 years. The most critical part, the aerospace aircraft carrier, would take at least 70 years. At this point, Zhao Yong couldn't help but ask Suchin, "How long do you plan for us to complete the aerospace aircraft carrier?" "With your abilities, I feel that 20 years would suffice." If I work hard to live a couple more years, I might even get to see it. Su Chen was taken aback and gave him a look that said, "Who do you think you're looking down on? It's expected to be completed in about a year." Upon hearing this, Zhao Yong's eyes widened, and his heart raced. He quickly pulled out a bottle of quick-acting heart pill from his pocket and took several of them. Seeing this, Su Chen was stunned. "Old man, are you okay?" Only Su Chen dared to call Zhao Yong like that. He wouldn't get angry and instead found it endearing. Waving his hand, Zhao Yong said, "You really startled me. But after taking the medicine, I feel much better." Su Chen felt a bit embarrassed. Wasn't that a bit exaggerated? In fact, it wasn't exaggerated at all. Being able to build the aerospace mothership in just a year far exceeded Zhao Yong's expectations. "When do we start? By the way, aren't you still in charge of the Eternal Day project? Do we have to wait until that project is completed before we can start manufacturing?" Su Chen replied, "No need for that. They don't really need my help over there anymore. We can start manufacturing the aerospace mothership directly. Both projects can proceed simultaneously without any issues." Zhao Yong couldn't help but give a thumbs up, saying, "You're the one. Such a large project. And you can still manage both. Since you're not afraid of hard work, I'll do my best to support you." At that moment, one of Zhao Yong's subordinates approached, mentioning that the higher-ups wanted to host a welcoming banquet for them. Zhao Yong waved his hand and said, "Let the soldiers go. I still have things to take care of." The things he referred to were, of course, transforming the shipyard according to Su Chen's plans. Su Chen smiled calmly and said, "No need to rush, old Zhao." Zhao Yong looked up at the sky and couldn't help but feel emotional. "How can I not be anxious? Many of our comrades from this generation are no longer with us. I want them to see the strength of our country before they leave, so they can depart with peace of mind." Su Chen understood Zhao Yong's sentiment and smiled back. "Don't worry, old Zhao. I will definitely make sure they feel at ease." With Su Chen's promise, Zhao Yong's lips curled into a smile. With old Zhao's firm support, the shipyard quickly commenced its transformation project. Workers labored day and night, and the roar of machines was deafening. During the process of removing the roof, sparks flew, resembling fireworks lighting up the night sky. Meanwhile, various equipment was being upgraded and maintained. Old Zhao personally supervised, coordinating resources to ensure that every task proceeded in an orderly manner. Su Chen, on the other hand, immersed himself in the intense design and research work. After leaving the shipyard, Su Chen hurried to the Academy of Sciences. The tall buildings of the academy were filled with a sense of technology, and the white exterior shone in the sunlight. Upon entering the academy, Su Chen immediately felt a strong academic atmosphere. He headed straight to the laboratory that researched anti-gravity technology. Inside the lab, the most advanced particle accelerator in the country was on display. This massive device emitted a cold metallic sheen, with various wires and pipes intricately connected. This was the key equipment for achieving anti-gravity technology, which was the core technology of the aerospace mothership. Theoretically, as long as negative gravitons were found and combined with gravitons, the gravitational transmission chain could be severed, leading to the disappearance of gravity and providing crucial technical support for the flight of the aerospace mothership. Su Chen quickly began his research with the Academy scientists. He sat in front of the computer, opening the blueprints and data documents he had brought. The complex formulas and charts flickered on the screen, and his gaze was focused and intense. Assistants gathered around him, occasionally posing questions and suggestions. With a wealth of knowledge and precise data in his mind, Su Chen led the team to make continuous progress in their research. During an intense experiment, the data on the instruments suddenly fluctuated dramatically. Su Chen stared at the display screen, his heart racing. As the data gradually stabilized, he clenched his fist. "We have finally discovered the trace of the negative graviton." The entire team was shocked. It had only been 15 days since the project commenced. The core work had achieved a significant breakthrough. Next, it was time for stable production. Su Chen was surprised that this project turned out to be much easier than he had anticipated. Meanwhile, on the international stage, representatives from certain countries were worried about the electromagnetic cannon of another nation. In a confidential meeting room, the atmosphere was tense and dimly lit. Officials from these countries and representatives from another were seated around a long table for the 10th time. During this period, they had been communicating continuously to find a way to sanction the other nation. After discussions, they had come up with just one solution: to contact more countries and hold a joint meeting to discuss restrictions on the electromagnetic cannon. In the joint meeting hall, the spacious and bright conference room was filled with a tense atmosphere. The huge dome above gave a grand, yet oppressive feeling. Just 2 days ago, an unexpected proposal was made to hold an emergency joint meeting. Many countries seemed unprepared for this sudden call to gather. Some nations were puzzled, wondering what was going on this time. Based on their understanding, it was likely that the initiators were preparing to exert hegemony and bully another country. In previous meetings initiated by them, they were always driven by substantial interests. They wondered which unfortunate country would be sanctioned this time. Some smaller nations felt a pang of sympathy. However, they were reassured by the presence of another nation. Once they discovered that there were plans for hegemony, this nation would exercise its veto power to sanction the initiators. This planted a seed of humanitarian impression in the hearts of various smaller nations. At this moment, representatives from various countries began to take their seats. The atmosphere felt like the calm before a storm, oppressive yet tinged with an eerie sense. The representative from the aforementioned nation, wearing a sharp suit, stood tall and alert, exuding wisdom and vigilance. He walked steadily to a position that only 5 people from the entire region could occupy. Next to him was a representative from another prominent nation, whose robust figure stood out in the crowd. He gently patted the representative's shoulder, slightly turned, and quietly asked, "What is the intention behind this meeting initiated by them? Do you have any information regarding their motives?" Gu Chuanwen casually asked, not really expecting the representative to give him a genuine answer. It was just a greeting. The representative shook his head, his thick eyebrows slightly furrowing, and spoke in English with a distinct accent. "We are not sure, but this meeting is definitely unusual. At least we have noticed that the diplomatic activities from a certain country have been quite frequent lately. I believe you must have received similar intelligence, right?" Indeed. Before attending this meeting, they had received information from their intelligence department indicating that the diplomatic efforts from that country had been unusually active recently. Even small nations that previously didn't attract their attention had now become targets for diplomacy. It seemed that there was something significant happening this time. Seeing that Gu Chuanwen did not respond, the representative added, "However, although we don't have specific intelligence, I personally feel that this time, the activities might be aimed at you. Haven't you noticed? Many eyes were watching you when you entered." At this point, the representative couldn't help but grin, looking as if he was anticipating a good show. Gu Chuanwen ignored his smirk. Just as the representative had mentioned, he had indeed sensed some unfriendly gazes upon entering the conference room, especially from the sycophants of that country. However, the Dragon Kingdom had long since changed, and even if they were to face trouble, Gu Chuanwen was unbothered. He comfortably leaned against the table, adopting a relaxed posture, seemingly signaling to those individuals that they could bring it on. He wasn't afraid. Meanwhile, representatives from various countries were closely following the lead of that country, like asteroids orbiting a star. Their eyes occasionally darted towards the direction of the Dragon Kingdom's representative, filled with disdain. The representative from the Dragon Kingdom appeared quite at ease. It remained to be seen if he could maintain that smile for long. The representative from the smaller country, despite his short stature, was trying to stand tall, with a glint of malice in his eyes. He whispered to the sycophants of that country, "This meeting on sanctions against the Dragon Kingdom looks promising. They are well prepared and have offered substantial benefits to many countries. Aid in the hundreds of billions has us all envious. It's clear that they really want to crush the Dragon Kingdom this time." The representative from the larger country nodded slightly, wearing a flattering smile as he replied, "Exactly. As long as we follow their lead, we are sure to benefit. Only by aligning with them can we share in the gains." The representative from the banana country silently listened, his eyes revealing a hint of hesitation. But soon, that hesitation was replaced with a determination to follow the lead of that country. After all, the banana industry was now in decline, and they were no longer afraid of sanctions from the Dragon Kingdom. Soon, as representatives from various countries took their seats, the representative from that country confidently walked onto the podium under the gaze of everyone present. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and began to articulate the purpose of the meeting. His voice echoed in the quiet conference hall, carrying an undeniable arrogance. "Distinguished representatives, thank you for taking the time to attend this meeting. The theme of today's gathering is peace and stability." As soon as he finished speaking, a wave of boos and mockery erupted from the audience. It was truly surprising to see such a country discussing peace and stability. Did they not realize that they were the greatest destabilizing factor affecting global peace? If they refrained from causing trouble, aside from the Middle East, other regions could maintain peace and stability. They were the ones stirring up conflict from behind the scenes. They are an arms empire. If the world stabilizes, who would they sell their weapons to? The representative from that country really had thick skin, despite the jeers from the audience. He continued his speech with a forced smile, seeing such a strong reaction from everyone. "I know today's meeting is very valuable." Continuing on the previous topic, he stated, "With the development of military weapons in various countries, the peace and stability of the world face new challenges. For instance, the powerful electromagnetic cannon, if used recklessly, could bring tremendous disasters to the globe. Therefore, we propose a bill to limit the use of electromagnetic cannons." As he spoke, the details of the bill were displayed on the large screen behind him. The representative continued, "We propose that all countries vote to reach an international consensus that no country should use electromagnetic cannons indiscriminately." A murmur of discussion arose from the audience. The representatives from a certain country looked visibly displeased. One of them clenched his fists tightly, his eyes narrowing slightly. Only that country possesses the technology and capability to utilize electromagnetic cannons, and this move was clearly targeting them. Those guys, if they can't compete, they resort to restrictions. This conference seems to have made them realize their limitations. An assistant couldn't help but curse. The representative's gaze swept over those supporting the proposal, and he sneered quietly. "Sanction us? Do they even have the right?" Chapter 165. Did the carrier fleet of that country get scared away? The representative said nothing. He simply watched quietly. He wanted to see just how much power they thought they had to limit their freedom. As the representative finished speaking, everyone's attention turned towards them. Some ill-intentioned countries were already snickering. Many nations supported the proposal, loudly declaring their agreement. At first glance, it seemed to be nearly half. The representative from a certain country noticed this and remarked, "It seems that they have been working behind the scenes extensively for this meeting." Indeed, the diplomatic team from that country had been buzzing around various nations like busy bees in recent days. They promised economic aid, military protection, or technical support to smaller nations. For influential countries, they attempted to win hearts through political deals and exchanges of interests. Under their persuasion, Some countries began to waver and agree to the conditions put forth by them. On the other side, within the borders of the Dragon Nation, the public is closely monitoring the United Nations conference through various channels. Online, people are in an uproar. It's clear that there's jealousy over our country's technological advancements, and it's utterly shameless to try to limit us in this way. Can they stoop any lower? It's reasonable for them to ban nuclear weapons due to environmental concerns, but electromagnetic cannons don't even emit radiation. Why impose restrictions? They obviously want to use the public opinion from various countries to suppress us instead of following the rules of the conference. We can't back down, if necessary. I'll smoke a couple of packs today and build more impressive weapons to stand our ground. At the conference site, representatives from other countries display a range of expressions. Some representatives from friendly nations show concern. They understand that such hegemonic actions will disrupt the balance of international relations, but under immense pressure, they feel helpless. Go for it. Dragon Nation, don't back down. We firmly stand by your side. Cheered a prince from an oil-rich nation. Other countries in the Middle East echoed similar sentiments, standing resolutely with them like devoted fans. Except for one representative. When necessary, we can provide more funds to sanction the Dragon Nation. We are not short of money. Like the previous representative, those allied with the hegemonic nation sat in their seats, their eyes filled with anticipation as they awaited the voting segment. They seemed to envision the benefits promised by the hegemonic nation falling into their pockets. After a brief moment of anger, the Dragon Nation delegation quickly calmed down. Gu Chuanwen and other representatives quietly discussed their counter-strategy. They knew this would be a difficult battle, but the Dragon Nation would not easily succumb to such unfair sanctions. As the conference progressed, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The representative from the hegemonic country sat at the podium, a smug smile on his face, seemingly confident that his plan would succeed. At that moment, a representative from another country stood up. Isn't the Dragon Nation always fond of peace and stability? Your invention of the electromagnetic cannon makes us feel uneasy and seriously undermines the peace and stability of our planet. We believe you will surely support our proposal. This was an obvious attempt to flatter while undermining. Faced with pressure from all sides, a representative from the Dragon Nation stood up. His gaze swept over the crowd, and unexpectedly, he proposed that before the voting, all countries should watch a video about the electromagnetic cannon. The reasoning was simple. Many nations had not truly witnessed the power of the electromagnetic cannon, and voting on it would be unfair. As soon as he spoke, representatives from the other countries were taken aback, exchanging confused glances. The representative from the country that had made the flattering remarks looked uneasy, leaning toward another representative and whispering, "What is the Dragon Nation up to? What are they really trying to sell us?" The other representative shook his head, looking bewildered. They instinctively wanted to oppose this proposal. However, surprisingly, the representative from the hegemonic nation raised both hands in approval. At this moment, the representatives from the local region and another nation were completely bewildered. They looked towards the representative from a certain country, their eyes filled with confusion. Soon, the big screen began to play a video showcasing the power of an electromagnetic cannon demonstrated in the ocean. In the footage, the powerful beam from the cannon descended like a meteor, tearing through the sky. Accompanied by a deafening roar, it rushed straight towards its target. In the face of this terrifying weapon, all interception methods failed, as if a natural disaster had struck a small island. Flames soared, and a huge mushroom cloud rose, creating a scene reminiscent of a nuclear explosion, sending chills down people's spines. In almost an instant, the target was destroyed. The immense shockwave and destructive power filled the entire scene with a sense of awe. Representatives from various nations stared intently at the screen, many involuntarily gasping in shock. Even those who had seen the video before were filled with fear upon watching it again, their bodies trembling slightly. Some representatives who were already wary of the electromagnetic cannon became even more determined to restrict this weapon. They believed that such a powerful weapon, if left unchecked, would pose a significant threat to their national security. The representatives from the local region and another nation couldn't help but laugh at this scene. Haha. What is this? Is it helping us? Some nations that had never seen an electromagnetic cannon before were initially hesitant, but now they would only firmly support restricting it. It was truly amusing. No wonder the representative from a certain country agreed. They must have guessed that the local nation was acting foolishly. In their view, playing this video was a stupid move, undoubtedly backfiring. It made more people side with the idea of restricting the electromagnetic cannon. However, just as everyone was about to start voting, a certain individual spoke up again. His voice was clear and loud, echoing in the quiet conference hall. Please take a look at the fleeing aircraft carrier fleet in the video. I wonder whose carriers those are? The assistant immediately understood and responded loudly. That is the fleet from a certain country. Their two powerful carrier fleets originally wanted to stop us, but ended up getting scared away. This news was like a bombshell, causing an uproar among the representatives. Those who were unaware suddenly widened their eyes, their faces filled with shock. What? The two carrier fleets from a certain country were actually scared away by the local nation's warships? And they are supposedly the strongest two fleets? How could their fleets be afraid of 3 warships from the local nation? So cowardly. Immediately, an even more astonishing piece of news emerged from the crowd, shocking everyone. It was said that the target attacked by the local nation was actually a naval base belonging to a certain country. Chapter 166, When Money Jingles. All problems come to a halt. It was reported that in order to deceive its citizens, A certain country even claimed to have been attacked by pirates and even issued a statement about it. I know that statement. Calling for everyone to join together to eliminate the pirates. Well, it turns out they were just eliminating themselves. This is not typical behavior for that country. Shouldn't they be declaring war on the Dragon Nation? 2 aircraft carrier fleets were scared away by 3 of the Dragon Nation's warships. How could they dare to declare war? At this moment, the room was filled with astonishment. Representatives from smaller nations, who had always believed that that country was still the world's hegemon, were deeply shaken. They began to reassess the current international situation, realizing that the global landscape seemed to have undergone a tremendous change. The rise of the Dragon Nation was unstoppable, and the hegemonic status of that country might be on the verge of collapse. Looking at the voting buttons in their hands, the representatives found themselves in a dilemma. They understood that casting a vote in favor would undoubtedly be opposing the Dragon Nation. However, voting against it might offend that country. Just then, Gu Chuanwen's voice rang out again. He said to his assistant, "Record this, and later we will see which countries agree and which oppose. As a reference for our future diplomacy." This statement left those representatives who aligned with that country in a state of panic. They secretly thought, it's over. Is the Dragon Nation keeping a grudge now? What terrified them even more were Gu Chuanwen's next words. He scanned the room with a firm gaze and slowly said, "By the way, just to remind you, we hold a veto power. In other words, your votes are actually meaningless." Upon hearing this, the representatives could no longer maintain their composure. Just 2 seconds later, the data on the voting screen began to jump wildly. The representatives from various nations started to abstain. The representative from one country hastily stood up, looking flustered as he explained, "I slipped. I meant to abstain." He looked at the Dragon Nation, his eyes filled with pleading. It was as if he was saying, "I really slipped. Please let it go." The representatives from the Dragon Nation watched this scene with faint smiles, exchanging knowing glances with the representatives of that country. Meanwhile, the representatives from that country wore exceptionally grim expressions. It was hard for them to believe that what was happening before their eyes was real. They never expected that the public opinion offensive they had spent so much money to organize would be easily dismantled by Gu Chuanwen's simple maneuver. Their original plan was to use the pressure of public opinion from various countries to force the Dragon Nation to submit. After all, the Dragon Nation had a veto power, so they thought to pressure it through public opinion. However, they never anticipated that the nations they had courted would so easily change their stance. In fact, these nations were also quite helpless. The power of the Dragon Nation's electromagnetic cannon made them realize that it had strength comparable to, or even surpassing that of that country. In this situation, they did not dare to provoke the Dragon Nation lightly. Moreover, the Dragon Nation had always been a symbol of peace. In stark contrast to the hegemonic actions of that country, these smaller nations believed that even without restrictions on the Dragon Nation, it would not pose an unwarranted threat to them. If they participate in this game, winning might yield some benefits from a certain country, but if they lose, they will be powerless against retaliation from the Dragon Nation. Those benefits are insignificant compared to the consequences of such retaliation. Therefore, abstaining became their wisest choice. Watching the screen filled with abstentions and opposing votes, with only a few in favor, Gu Chuanwen understood that there was no need for him to cast a supporting vote anymore. He stood up, looked directly at the representatives of the certain country, and stated sternly, "We, the Dragon Nation, are not unreasonable. Whenever you manage to develop an electromagnetic cannon, we can consider limiting it then." With a hint of amusement at the corner of his mouth, he added, "By the way, missiles are quite threatening too. How about we limit those instead?" The representatives of the certain country understood that this was a mockery from the Dragon Nation. In today's world, missiles are one of the crucial pillars of their military power. If missiles were truly limited, their military advantage would vanish, making it the Dragon Nation's world. At this moment, the vote was missing only the Dragon Nation's input. But regardless of whether they voted in favor or against, it could no longer change the outcome. The proposal from the certain country was completely bankrupt. However, to aggravate the situation further, the Dragon Nation ultimately cast a supporting vote. The representatives from the certain country saw this result and were nearly infuriated to the point of losing their composure. Gu Chuanwen coldly smiled as he led the Dragon Nation delegation out of the conference hall. After they left, the atmosphere in the hall became quite peculiar. Some representatives from other nations stood up and followed the Dragon Nation's representatives out, seemingly aligning themselves with the Dragon Nation. The representatives from the certain country watched this scene with outrage. Their meticulously planned meeting did not achieve its purpose and instead allowed the Dragon Nation to shine on the international stage. Meanwhile, the powerful presence, diplomatic wisdom, and military deterrence displayed by the Dragon Nation made them acutely aware of its formidable nature. In the joint conference, representatives from the certain country had always looked down on others with a dominant posture. But now, they suddenly realized that their status seemed to be replaced by the Dragon Nation. The Secretary of State was busy with official matters, but had been keeping a close eye on the situation at the joint conference. As time was running out, he immediately asked his assistant, "What is the latest situation at the joint conference? The Dragon Nation should be cornered by us by now, right? After all, we have invested hundreds of billions for this plan. This time, they will surely see our strength." The Secretary of State squinted slightly, a wicked smile appearing on his lips, as if dealing with the Dragon Nation was an easy task. "You may be slightly stronger than us in military power, but what our country excels at is not just military strength. Don't forget, we are the wealthiest nation. When money talks, all problems cease." Just as he was reveling in his thoughts, the assistant delivered the news. Mr. Jack, it seems that the joint conference is not proceeding as we had anticipated. The Secretary of State suddenly froze, his smile vanishing. What does this mean? His assistant informed him of the situation. In the next moment, the secretary slumped into his chair, his eyes vacant. Another failure? The assistant, worried about him, said, Mr. Jack, are you all right? Get out. All of you get out. The assistant was startled and didn't dare to stay in the room, quickly scrambling out. Chapter 167. What have they messed up this time? In the Renaissance building. In the comprehensive laboratory, sunlight streamed through the laboratory windows, illuminating Su Chen's focused face. At this moment, he was immersed in the research and development of the anti-gravity engine. The complex blueprints and data, which seemed like a foreign language to an ordinary person, were effortlessly handled by him. The anti-gravity engine, a sci-fi-like existence, is key to enabling the spacecraft to soar through the skies. However, to turn this dream into reality, numerous challenges must be overcome. The issue of energy supply is the foremost obstacle. After countless experiments and calculations, Su Chen discovered that starting and operating the anti-gravity engine requires an enormous amount of energy support. Fortunately, they have now mastered nuclear fusion power generation technology. However, to build the spacecraft, just the anti-gravity engine alone requires vast energy. A nuclear fusion reactor capable of generating massive energy is not enough. They need two. Truly, this is a spacecraft. It's worth noting that one nuclear fusion reactor is sufficient to meet the power needs of a large city. Imagine how terrifying the energy demand of the anti-gravity engine is. Thus, Su Chen ultimately decided to construct two nuclear fusion reactors. With determined steps, he walked towards the office of the head of the Everbright Project's construction department. Along the way, the designs for the anti-gravity engine and the energy circuit diagrams for the nuclear fusion reactors kept flashing in his mind. The lines and symbols seemed to dance before his eyes. At this moment, the head, Zhao Gang, was also eagerly searching for Su Chen to report good news. As soon as Su Chen stepped into the office, Zhao Gang's face lit up with excitement. Chief Su, what brings you here? I was just about to look for you. I have good news to share. The foundational construction of our miniature nuclear fusion reactor is basically complete. Zhao Gang's voice was filled with pride and joy. This news was like a spring breeze, bringing warmth to Su Chen's heart. The completion of the miniature nuclear reactor signifies a significant success for the Everbright project. This is the result of countless researchers and workers' day and night efforts. This is even faster than I expected. Our country truly lives up to its reputation as a construction powerhouse. Su Chen replied. Zhao Gang nodded. During the supervision process, the workers perfectly exemplified what it means to sacrifice for their cause. They worked tirelessly, as if they had been energized. Of course, as the head, he was no different. The significance of the Eternal Day project is immense, and being part of it is akin to participating in the development of nuclear weapons back in the day. Naturally, being one of its members is exhilarating. However, he truly feels for the workers. Chief Engineer Su, I suggest we give our workers a day off. They have been working incredibly hard. Zhao Gang looked at Su Chen, his eyes filled with anticipation. Even though he was the person in charge, he had to rely on Su Chen to voice it. After all, Su Chen was the chief engineer of this project, overseeing everything. And his position even surpassed that of Zhao Gang, the project leader. Su Chen nodded slightly, a warm smile on his face. Of course, if one day is not enough, then let it be two. The project is important, but the health of our comrades is just as important. He had been watching the hard work of the workers. They are the unsung heroes behind this great plan. Zhao Gang smiled. By the way, is there something you need to discuss with me? Next time, just call me. Or I can come over. You're so busy. No need to come find me personally. Zhao Gang said with a smile. Su Chen replied. No problem. Some things need to be said in person. Now that our micro-nuclear fusion reactors have been laid out and constructed, I plan to build 2 additional nuclear fusion reactors. The project leader's eyes widened in confusion. Chief Engineer Su, why do we need to build more reactors? ISN T9 micro-nuclear fusion reactors enough? His voice carried a hint of disbelief and surprise. Su Chen's gaze was firm as he slowly said, this time we are not constructing micro-reactors, but real nuclear fusion reactors. The project leader frowned, filled with doubt. The micro-nuclear fusion reactors we've built, despite being called micro, have power that far exceeds that of nuclear fission reactors, capable of providing a substantial amount of energy. ISNT that sufficient? Why do we need to build more? Su Chen smiled slightly, his tone calm. I have my reasons. His words were concise and resolute. The project leader looked at Su Chen, though puzzled. He knew that Su Chen's decisions must hold significant importance. When the higher-ups assigned him tasks, they mentioned that any request from Su Chen must be met. Any order from Su Chen must be executed. However, a new question soon arose for the project leader. The so-called real nuclear fusion reactors you mentioned should differ from the micro-nuclear fusion reactors, right? Do we need to explore and research again for a while? The project leader's expression showed some concern. Su Chen shook his head, taking out a stack of blueprints from his pocket and gently placing them on the table. No need for exploration. Just build according to these blueprints. The project leader was momentarily taken aback, then took the blueprints, opening them slowly with curiosity and reverence. As his gaze fell upon the detailed diagrams, he was instantly awed by the sight before him. The blueprints depicted intricate structures and circuits, meticulously labeled with various parameters and explanations. The content was comprehensive, and more importantly, the energy output indicated was astonishing. He began to study it carefully. The more he looked, the more amazed he became. His hand couldn't help but tremble slightly. The energy generated was actually 10 times that of a miniature nuclear fusion reactor. Moreover, it could be directly upgraded based on the miniature fusion reactor. The voice of the person in charge was filled with amazement. Su Chen looked at the astonished expression of the person in charge and patiently explained, when the miniature nuclear fusion reactor can no longer meet the demands in the future, there is no need to dismantle it. Upgrades can be made directly on its foundation. This not only saves resources, but also greatly improves efficiency. Listening to Su Chen's explanation, a sense of admiration naturally arose in the heart of the person in charge. It is important to note that this is not a simple upgrade, but an upgrade that can fully utilize the existing facilities. This concept is much more challenging. Yet, to Su Chen, it seemed like no difficulty at all. No wonder Chief Engineer Zhao Gang gave him a thumbs up in his heart. He held the blueprint tightly, fearing that it might be taken by someone else. Chief Engineer, this blueprint is detailed and professional. With it, I assure you we can finish within half a year at most. The eyes of the person in charge were filled with determination and resolve. Su Chen patted him on the shoulder. You've worked hard. This is crucial for the Eternal Day project. It's my duty, Zhao Gang replied with enthusiasm. In the following days, after getting ample rest, the staff dived back into the intense and busy construction. They were also full of curiosity about the construction of the fusion reactor. Wasn't it already completed? Why is construction starting again? Moreover, the reactor being built this time seemed much larger than the previous one. Its scale appeared to be several times greater. Wow. Has our country come up with something extraordinary again? Chapter 168. The Heart of the Mechanical Behemoth. At the massive construction site of the nuclear fusion reactor, cranes swung their long arms. Transport vehicles moved back and forth, and sparks from electric welding flickered like stars. Every worker was full of energy, knowing they were participating in a great endeavor. Meanwhile, Su Chen continued to optimize the anti-gravity engine in the laboratory. He studied day and night, constantly adjusting parameters and refining designs. Sometimes, for the sake of accuracy in a single data point, he would repeat experiments until he was satisfied. As time passed, the construction of the nuclear fusion reactor gradually took shape. The enormous circular structure shone with a metallic luster under the sun, resembling a fortress of energy leading to the future. Inside, precise instruments operated in an orderly fashion, and the energy core emitted a low hum, reminiscent of a dragon born under a prosperous nation. During this time, Su Chen often visited the construction site to communicate with the workers, answering their questions encountered during the construction process. His figure appeared at every critical construction point. This was the busiest time for Su Chen. He had to conduct research on anti-gravity while also participating in the Eternal Day project. Although things were not very hectic on the Eternal Day project site anymore, it was now nearing the final stage, and many tasks required his personal involvement to prevent new issues from arising in the closing process. Finally, after 6 months of hard work, 2 genuine nuclear fusion reactors stand tall on the ground. They resemble 2 majestic peaks, and at the moment of activation, a powerful energy will surge forth like a tidal wave, illuminating the night sky. Now, not only have the 2 nuclear fusion reactors been completed, but the development of the anti-gravity engine has also been accomplished during this time. The next step is to prepare for the testing phase. In a certain area, the Research Institute has become a key research base. It is not only a base for space mecha research, but also a manufacturing site for electromagnetic naval guns and anti-gravity engines. Fortunately, the area is large enough. Even after several expansions, it remains well concealed by dense forests. The surrounding security facilities have been upgraded from a battalion to a division. Su Chen actually felt it was unnecessary. Now that space mecha is gradually achieving mass production, the Institute already has 5 space mechas on guard. The additional military force seems superfluous. However, given that the organization has a military background, there is an inherent trust and reliance on ground forces. At Lu Qingji's request, Su Chen agreed to this arrangement. To prepare for the upcoming testing, Su Chen called in experts like Mai Jinja. As professionals, they could provide valuable advice for the testing work ahead. Chief Engineer Su, we heard you have something important to discuss with us? Professor Mai Jinja led a group of experts, all puzzled about the purpose of their summons. Many of them had participated in the research of a specific project and were usually very busy, with little time to engage in other projects. But since it was Su Chen who called them, they had to come regardless of how busy they were. Before Su Chen could explain, they were taken aback by the sight before them. It was their first time in this place, and they quickly scanned the surroundings, their attention drawn to the 2 massive nuclear fusion reactors in front of them. As core members of the project, they were familiar with nuclear fusion reactors. But these 2 were different from what they had previously encountered. They were obviously much larger. Chief Engineer Su, are these 2 giants also nuclear fusion reactors? They look significantly bigger than any we've seen before. Moreover, aren't nuclear fusion reactors supposed to follow a specific layout? How come there are suddenly 2 large ones here? Su Chen calmly replied, these were constructed by another team 6 months ago. Due to the rushed nature of the project, we initially built only micro-nuclear reactors. But these 2 before you represent the true form of nuclear fusion reactors. Their energy output is approximately 10 times that of the micro-nuclear fusion reactors. Everyone present was stunned. 10 times. The output of micro-nuclear fusion reactors was already quite formidable, and this one was 10 times that. This was astonishing. The crowd was thoroughly shocked. Mai Xinjia couldn't help but open his mouth, allowing the overwhelming emotion to spread throughout his body. After a long while, he finally regained his composure. Chief Engineer Su, could you tell us what these two fusion reactors are for? What could possibly require the energy from two fusion reactors? Or am I overthinking it? Mai Xinjia's words once again startled the professors. If these two reactors were meant to power something, that would be terrifying. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it an energy-devouring beast. Su Chen smiled calmly. That's exactly why I brought you here. Recently, I developed something that needs to be tested, and these two fusion reactors will provide the energy for it. As he spoke, Su Chen led the experts into a vast workshop. Inside, a gigantic device stood silently. This enormous apparatus had a dish-like structure, several meters in diameter, made of a silver-gray unknown alloy. Its surface featured regular patterns that guided energy flow. The edges had a bluish energy-sensing ring made of transparent crystal material, with flowing light and electric sparks flickering inside. At the bottom were sturdy support columns resembling the claws of a giant beast, crafted from the same alloy with three-dimensional textures. And at the connection point to the dish, a golden metal ring inscribed with advanced physical formulas. Above the device was a complex energy conversion apparatus, resembling a metallic labyrinth, with a central energy core sphere emitting a soft white light, wrapped in an energy shield, its surface crackling with electric arcs, while surrounding coils and conduits managed energy distribution and conversion. The entire setup exuded a strong sense of technology and futurism, as if it were a mysterious technological relic from the depths of the cosmos. Once again, everyone was stunned. They had absolutely never seen an apparatus that could be described as spectacular. Mai Xinjia couldn't help but reach out to touch it, as his fingers lightly grazed the surface. He instantly felt a cool sensation spreading throughout his body. His eyes gradually glazed over, and he whispered softly, "It feels like some kind of mechanical heart. I can almost feel it beating." Everyone paused, unable to suppress their laughter. Professor Mai, that's a great metaphor. But how did you determine that this is a mechanical heart? Mai Xinjia also felt it was just a vague impression. He was about to say he was just talking nonsense, but before he could speak, Su Chen jumped in. Professor Mai, you truly are a world-class expert. Your insight is remarkable. Everyone was taken aback, even Mai Xinjia, who was momentarily stunned, unsure of what Su Chen meant by that. Then, they heard Su Chen point at the nearby mechanical device and say, "Just as you mentioned, this indeed is a kind of mechanical heart." Chapter 169, Do We Deserve It? In that laboratory filled with a sense of technology and mystery, Su Chen stood beside a grand device that radiated a futuristic aura, much like the ancient Greek god who presided over future technology. He cleared his throat and, with a steady and powerful voice, introduced to the gathered experts, "Everyone, this so-called heart is actually an engine. To be more precise, it is an anti-gravity engine." His tone was calm, but when these words came out of his mouth, the experts who were originally filled with anticipation were all stunned. Their faces were written with shock. An anti-gravity engine? This mysterious device, which only appeared in science fiction novels, was now actually presented before their eyes. It was hard for them to believe. An elderly expert with graying hair widened his eyes and trembled as he said, "Anti-gravity engine? How is that possible? The current level of technology is simply not sufficient to develop such a thing." Other experts began to whisper and discuss among themselves. The most cutting-edge research on anti-gravity engines is happening in a certain region. However, it is still in the theoretical and exploratory stage. And even a small breakthrough would become a major news that shocks the entire research community. Yet, despite this, there hasn't been any breakthrough for decades. Many even believe that anti-gravity is impossible. So, are we not only achieving breakthroughs in key theories now, but also directly applying those theories to reality by manufacturing the anti-gravity device? This is simply unbelievable. If successfully developed, it will bring transformative impacts to the aerospace industry. The experts present couldn't hold their excitement. This kind of shock was no less than when a certain person conquered nuclear fusion technology. They couldn't believe that in their era, someone could develop such an unimaginable technological achievement. However, Su Chen's expression was extremely serious. He looked at the doubtful gazes of the crowd and said firmly, "I actually don't like to joke. This is undoubtedly an anti-gravity engine." The crowd looked at Su Chen's serious demeanor, and the shock in their hearts grew even stronger. They began to realize that this young man might have truly created another miracle. Amidst the shock, a sense of awe towards Su Chen surged in the hearts of the experts. The nuclear fusion technology was invented by Su Chen, which had already left them astonished. Now, he had developed an anti-gravity engine, which made them deeply recognize Su Chen's terrifying scientific talent. Professor Mai Xinjia, as a representative among them, stepped forward, his eyes filled with curiosity and amazement. He looked at the mysterious anti-gravity engine and slowly asked, "So, Chief Engineer Su, are these two nuclear fusion reactors used to provide energy for the anti-gravity engine?" Su Chen slightly nodded, giving an affirmative response. Instantly, a storm surged in Professor Mai Xinjia's heart. He knew the immense energy of nuclear fusion reactors, and now, these two powerful reactors were actually providing energy for the anti-gravity engine, which gave him a deeper understanding of the power of the anti-gravity engine. Various imaginations began to emerge in his mind, envisioning what kind of shocking effects would occur once this engine was activated. "This is incredible," Professor Mai Xinjia murmured to himself. His gaze was fixed on the anti-gravity engine, as if he were admiring a priceless treasure. His heart was filled with emotion. Realizing that Su Chen's creation was not just a technological achievement, but also a significant breakthrough for the future of humanity. Other experts were also filled with excitement, eagerly wanting to know what kind of machinery would require such a sci-fi device as an anti-gravity engine. Some speculated it could be a new type of fighter jet, as applying anti-gravity technology to aircraft would provide unprecedented maneuverability and combat capability. Others guessed it might be a spacecraft, since only such vehicles would need such powerful propulsion and technical support. Various speculations circulated among the experts, each filled with anticipation and curiosity. For the scientists involved in the project, Su Chen felt there was no need for secrecy. He took a deep breath and slowly said, "This anti-gravity engine is actually the core of a warship known as a space carrier." Upon hearing the name, the experts were completely stunned. Their reactions were quite exaggerated. Some gasped in disbelief, unable to close their mouths for a long time. Others widened their eyes as if they had seen a brilliant future ahead. Some were so excited they trembled all over. Professor Mai Jinja was especially shocked, his voice becoming hoarse. "Chief Engineer Su, you're not joking with us, are you? You're actually going to build a space carrier? But with our current level of technology, it's simply impossible to create one. How can we suspend such a massive hull? That's a major issue." Just as Mai Jinja was speaking, he suddenly stopped. Just as he had said, suspending the hull was indeed a problem. But at that moment, he looked at the device in front of him. The anti-gravity engine. Isn't this exactly what can make the hull float? Seeing the realization on his face, Su Chen smiled slightly. "So, why can't we build it? We have already completed the most crucial anti-gravity engine." This statement completely awakened Professor Mai Jinja. He suddenly realized that Su Chen had already made significant breakthroughs in the construction of the space carrier. He had tackled the toughest challenge, the anti-gravity engine. At that moment, the other experts also buzzed with excitement in their minds. They had just learned that the country actually had plans to build a space carrier. Moreover, this plan had already achieved significant breakthroughs, which was truly an unexpected windfall. A strong emotion suddenly surged within Professor Mai Jinja. "Comrade Su Chen, you always bring us various surprises. The previous nuclear fusion technology has accelerated the progress of human technology by at least 100 years. Now, you've developed the anti-gravity engine. This move is enough to make you the pioneer of the interstellar era for Blue Planet." He was almost ready to express gratitude from all of humanity towards Su Chen. Su Chen quickly waved his hands. "Professor Mai, don't get too excited. The anti-gravity engine still needs to be tested. If you put such a high expectation on me and the tests fail, it would be quite embarrassing, wouldn't it?" Mai Jinja paused for a moment and then realized. "So you want us here to test this anti-gravity engine?" Su Chen nodded. "Of course." The experts exchanged glances, their expressions a bit astonished. "But do we even qualify?" Chapter 170. Activation of the anti-gravity field. Do we qualify? A group of internationally renowned experts, surprisingly, felt a sense of inferiority in front of Su Chen's experimental project. This made Su Chen feel quite embarrassed. The main reason was that Su Chen's experimental project was far ahead of its time. Even though they were all well-known experts with substantial theoretical knowledge and rich experimental experience, they still felt unqualified to participate in Su Chen's cutting-edge experiment. Su Chen chuckled awkwardly. "You all really love to joke. If you all don't qualify, then no one can participate in the testing. Moreover, this test is not only to test the anti-gravity engine, but also to facilitate our communication and progress. Alright, let's get started." Su Chen announced the commencement of the anti-gravity test. However, before the test, some preparations were needed. He directed the staff to busily transport various items. Everyone knew these items were crucial for testing the anti-gravity engine. The force field is invisible. One can only determine its existence and strength through the performance of other objects. After placing several items around the anti-gravity engine, Su Chen's gaze sharpened as he scanned everything. After a moment, he slightly furrowed his brow and murmured, "It still feels like something is missing." Professor Mai Jinja nodded beside him, his expression serious as he said, "Indeed. We need some sufficiently heavy objects to test the limits of the force field. While there are many items, their quality is a bit lacking." True to their expertise, they immediately identified the issues with the testing materials. After pondering for a moment, he looked at Su Chen and asked, "Is there a gantry crane nearby? We could go to the mountains to dig up some large stones and then lift them here for the staff to bring in. The weight of the stones should serve as suitable test subjects." Su Chen shook his head, saying, "The lab doesn't have that kind of equipment, and we won't need it." Professor Mai Jinja was momentarily stunned, his face filled with confusion as he asked, "Not needed? Then how is such a large anti-gravity engine transported and moved?" Su Chen did not explain immediately, but fell into deep thought. Professor Mai Jinja's words seemed to have cast a stone into the calm surface of his mind, creating ripples of contemplation. Moments later, as if suddenly realizing something, Su Chen quickly took out his phone and made a call. The people in the laboratory exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what Su Chen was planning. Just as everyone was filled with curiosity, the ceiling of the laboratory slowly opened, emitting a slight mechanical sound. Everyone instinctively looked up. At the same time, they heard the heavy sound of footsteps growing closer, accompanied by a rumbling noise, as if some enormous machinery was approaching them. Soon, through the laboratory ceiling, they saw a gigantic metallic head. The metallic head emanated a cold glow, exuding a strong sense of technology. Everyone focused their attention. And it was indeed a space mech. Mai Xinjia and a group of scientists were astonished, their eyes wide and mouths agape, as if witnessing an incredible scene. It was their first time seeing such a gigantic mech. Professor Mai Xinjia asked with a slight tremor in his voice, "What is this mech all about?" Su Chun smiled faintly and calmly introduced, "This is a space mech, developed by our country." Upon hearing this, everyone was taken aback. Which team was so impressive? An expert couldn't help but ask. Su Chun chuckled but remained silent. The staff in charge of transportation proudly informed them, "Of course, it's our chief engineer Su." Everyone was shocked again, looking at Su Chun as if he were a monster. If they hadn't signed a confidentiality agreement beforehand, they probably would never have seen such a terrifying space mech in their lifetime. Professor Mai Xinjia sighed deeply, saying, "I've only been away for a few years. Yet it feels like the country has undergone tremendous changes. Individual combat mechs, space mechs, strategic ships of the Longwei class, nuclear fusion technology, anti-gravity engines, each one more sci-fi than the last, yet all have become reality. And the upcoming aerospace carrier, as long as the anti-gravity engine testing is successful, seems like it could also become a reality." What was even more terrifying to them was that behind all this, there was Su Chun's influence. Or rather, it was all spearheaded by this young man. They couldn't think any further. The more they thought, the more frightening it felt. At this moment, one professor glanced at the space mech and then asked Su Chun, "What do you need this big guy for?" Another professor added, "Are you planning to use it instead of a crane to move heavy objects for testing the anti-gravity engine?" Su Chun shook his head and said, "No need for that. We can directly use it to test the anti-gravity engine." Everyone was taken aback for a moment, then suddenly realized. They thought, it can be used this way too. They examined the space mech closely and found nothing more suitable. Su Chun said with a serious expression, "Everyone, step back." Although puzzled, they obeyed Su Chun's command and began to retreat. "Keep moving back. The field of the anti-gravity engine is quite large. Retreating 100 meters is about right." Everyone was somewhat surprised. That range seemed a bit excessive. They continued to retreat until Su Chun nodded for them to stop. Then the real testing began. As power began to flow, both nuclear fusion reactors reacted. A humming sound could be faintly heard from them, the noise of internal machinery operating. Meanwhile, the anti-gravity engine also started working. A subtle buzzing of electric currents could be heard, though not loud. It seemed to carry a mysterious force that attracted everyone's attention. Then, various instrument indicator lights began to flicker, red, green, and blue lights intertwining, like dreamlike colors dancing. A layer of elusive microlight gradually appeared on the surface of the anti-gravity engine, mysterious and profound, as if it came from another dimension. As the preparatory work progressed, the faint glow gradually brightened, resembling stars twinkling in the night sky. Meanwhile, various sensors and monitoring devices in the laboratory became busy. The data on the screens fluctuated continuously, with numbers and graphs flowing like waterfalls, recording every subtle change in the preparation process of the anti-gravity engine. In the next moment, the anti-gravity field was activated. An invisible force seemed to gradually gather in the space surrounding the anti-gravity engine. The air began to tremble slightly, as if affected by an unknown power. Some tiny dust particles also started to float slowly, drifting lightly as if in space. This was a small prelude to the upcoming anti-gravity marvel. Everyone was tense, their eyes fixed on the anti-gravity engine, filled with anticipation. They were uncertain whether this test would succeed. Chapter 171. The space mech was launched. Soon, with the activation of the anti-gravity field, the prepared items began to float. This scene shocked everyone. Those items that had been lying quietly on the ground seemed to have lost the constraints of gravity, slowly rising into the air. People widened their eyes, their faces displaying incredulity. Did this mean the anti-gravity engine had been successfully developed? Everyone couldn't help but cheer. It worked. It worked. The anti-gravity engine was really developed. Su Chun is indeed a genius. He really managed to develop the anti-gravity engine. Seeing this scene, I could almost envision our nation exploring the stars in the future. It was truly exhilarating. We are even more impressive than others, who have yet to achieve preliminary breakthroughs, while we have already developed the anti-gravity engine, leading by at least 50 years. However, Su Chun did not let this momentary victory cloud his judgment. He calmly stated, "We can't celebrate too soon. We still need to test the strength of the field. If the field strength is too weak, that won't work." Everyone nodded in agreement, continuing to watch with tension. All the test items within 20 meters of the anti-gravity engine began to float. The crowd's expressions shifted slightly as they were deeply captivated by this magical scene. What excited them the most was the space mech, which seemed to be on the verge of floating as well. This was incredible. The weight of the space mech was at least several tons. If it could float, that would be amazing. The crowd stared at the space mech for half a minute, only to find that it remained in a state of hovering, not quite taking off. They realized that perhaps this was the limit of the anti-gravity engine. They wanted to comfort Su Chun, as this was already quite impressive. If they could truly lift a space mech weighing several tons, the scientists from elsewhere would probably be in disbelief. Mai Xinjia wanted to say some comforting words to Su Chun, but when he looked at Su Chun, he found him completely calm, as if he didn't need any reassurance at all. Not only that, but Su Chun also instructed Mai Xinjia and the other professors to step back. The crowd was puzzled but complied. At this moment, Su Chun said to the staff, "Increase the power to 50%. This statement left everyone stunned. What does it mean? Could it be that the power of the anti-gravity engine was not fully utilized earlier? The crowd exchanged bewildered glances, feeling incredulous. Professor Maijinja hurriedly asked, "What is the current power level?" The staff replied, 5%. Everyone was immediately astonished. Their faces filled with disbelief. At just 5%, it was able to make a space mech weighing dozens of tons hover slightly. What would happen at 50%? The staff nervously prepared to push the control lever, and a strange glow appeared around the force field. Everyone was captivated by this light. Their eyes fixed on the control lever, filled with anticipation. At the same time, with a sudden sound, the control lever was pushed to the 50-degree position. In an instant, just a split second, the intensity of the force field reached a terrifying level. Under the gaze of the crowd, the dozens of tons heavy space mech actually sprang up and floated into the air. The entire venue was in shock. It floated up, it really floated up. My goodness, how terrifying is this 50% power? It was able to make a space mech weighing dozens of tons float so easily. If I hadn't witnessed this scene unfold right before my eyes, I wouldn't have believed it was real. It truly sprang up. This is so exaggerated. It felt like gravity had completely lost its effect at that moment. Compared to the excitement of the experts, Su Chun remained very calm, as if everything was expected. He looked at the staff and continued, "Increase the power to 100%. Instantly, everyone's gaze was focused on him. What kind of scene would it be if the power were increased to 100%? As the staff pushed the anti-gravity engine's power to the limit, it was noticeable that the first to react were not the anti-gravity engines, but the nuclear fusion reactors. A strange glow suddenly appeared around them. This light was eye-catching, and one could clearly hear the sounds of internal machinery working. These sounds resembled the low murmurs of ancient gods, filled with a mysterious aura. Next, the anti-gravity engine also reacted. With the command given, the power began to rise rapidly. In an instant, a dazzling light erupted from the anti-gravity engine, like a divine blade tearing through the darkness, illuminating the entire laboratory. The light was so intense that it was hard to look directly at it, as if it contained endless mysterious power. Powerful energy waves spread wildly from the center of the anti-gravity engine, causing the air to ripple like a lake disturbed by a giant rock, creating visible ripples. The originally sturdy experimental equipment trembled slightly under the impact of this energy, as if bowing to this powerful technological force. Following this, the effect of the anti-gravity field was amplified to the extreme. Everything around, whether heavy metal blocks or light paper, seemed to have lost the binding force of gravity, soaring into the air at an incredible speed. They spun and danced in the air, like toys manipulated by an invisible giant hand. The most spectacular of all was the already colossal space mech. Under the extreme power of the anti-gravity effect, the space mech shot up again like a steel giant summoned by a deity, with a breathtaking momentum. Its silhouette flickered in the light as cotton, like willow fluff. The entire laboratory transformed into a fantastical technological world, filled with mystery and awe. The onlookers were left speechless, filled with endless reverence and amazement. They knew that at this moment, they witnessed a miracle of technology and opened a brand new era. And Su Chun was the harbinger of this new age. All right, shut down the test. Su Chin's voice rang out again, and the staff slowly reduced the power of the anti-gravity engine. During this process, the floating objects gradually descended. Only after all items safely landed did the staff completely shut down the anti-gravity engine. Everyone slowly came back to their senses, clearly having just reacted from the miraculous scene they had witnessed. At this moment, the gaze towards Su Chun was no longer just simple admiration. They even felt that Su Chun was not human, but perhaps an alien sent from another planet, with the purpose of revolutionizing the technology on their planet to cope with some mysterious external threat. Of course, they were overthinking it. Su Chun was definitely human. Next, we will prepare for the biological test. Su Chun said again. Chapter 172, Sudden Death of the Organism. The biological test was about to begin. However, before the test, Su Chun noticed that these experts seemed to have many questions they wanted to ask him. He smiled calmly and said, "I believe you all have many questions about the anti-gravity engine itself. This is a good opportunity for us to communicate." As soon as he finished speaking, smiles appeared on the faces of the experts. As experts, they also held another identity, that of scholars. They had a spirit of diving deep into problems. If they couldn't resolve these doubts and had to keep them bottled up, it would be quite uncomfortable for them. Now that Su Chun had given them the chance to inquire, they immediately began to ask questions. A seasoned expert wearing glasses was the first to speak up. "Chief Engineer Su, I specialize in nuclear physics and am not very familiar with anti-gravity. I would like to ask what the working principle of this anti-gravity engine is." Su Chun slightly lifted his chin and answered steadily. "The core principle of the anti-gravity engine is to utilize a special energy field to counteract the gravity of this planet. By precisely controlling the intensity and direction of this energy field, we can achieve the suspension of objects or even free movement. Just like earlier, by adjusting the power of the anti-gravity engine, we achieved local gravity cancellation in this experimental area." The expert nodded thoughtfully. Another expert then asked, "How is this energy field generated? How is its stability ensured?" Su Chun patiently explained, "This energy field is produced by a special device we developed, the anti-gravity device. We also employed advanced nuclear fusion technology and a complex control system to ensure the stable output of the energy field. Before this test, I conducted extensive simulations and experiments to continuously optimize the system's performance and improve the stability of the energy field. Another expert raised a question. The power of the anti-gravity engine must have an upper limit, right? What happens if that limit is exceeded? After a moment of thought, Suchin replied, we have not yet exceeded its limit. I speculate that surpassing a certain power level may have unpredictable effects on the engine itself and the surrounding environment. Therefore, we must strictly control the power when using the anti-gravity engine to ensure safety. A young expert curiously asked, what is the application outlook for the anti-gravity engine? What changes will it bring to our lives? The questions from the experts came one after another, and Suchin maintained his professionalism and composure, answering each one. Mai Xinzhe listened to Suchin's professional responses and felt deeply moved. He suddenly felt as if he was getting old and that it was time for the younger generation to take over. Suchin did not rush the tests. He spent considerable time answering various questions from these experts. If others were present, they would surely be astonished to see such renowned figures in various fields being guided by a young person. They even wore expressions of satisfaction after gaining knowledge. This scene was quite striking. After a long while, the experts understood their doubts, feeling quite relieved. Their gazes towards Suchin also carried a newfound respect, reminiscent of the respect they had for their teachers when they were students. Chief Engineer Su, the white mouse you wanted has arrived. A voice from an assistant suddenly rang out. He was carefully holding a cage containing a small white mouse. Everyone's attention was instantly drawn to this little creature, curiously observing it. The mouse moved restlessly in the cage, occasionally squeaking. Professor Mai Xinzhe looked at the white mouse with a mix of confusion and anticipation, asking, Chief Engineer Su, are you planning to use the white mouse for the upcoming biological tests? Suchin nodded slightly, his expression serious as he explained. Using objects alone to test the anti-gravity engine is not rigorous enough. We also need to confirm whether biological entities can survive normally in the force field created by this anti-gravity engine. The experts nodded in agreement, recognizing the rigor of Suchin's testing approach. Subsequently, Suchin personally placed the cage containing the white mouse gently around the anti-gravity engine. This position seemed like a stage filled with mysterious power, about to showcase a spectacular drama concerning technology and life. All eyes were tightly focused on the white mouse, and everyone was filled with tension and anticipation. They understood that the outcome of this test would have a crucial impact on the future applications of the anti-gravity engine. As the command to activate the anti-gravity engine was given, the atmosphere in the laboratory instantly became tense. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the white mouse, as if witnessing the arrival of a historic moment. The little mouse, unaware of what was happening, curiously surveyed its surroundings, its small eyes glimmering with confusion. Then, as the anti-gravity engine began to operate, a force field gradually emerged. The white mouse, along with its cage, slowly began to rise. And this sudden change caused it to panic, squeaking anxiously. The sound of the mouse echoed in the laboratory while the experts outside nervously observed its condition. Professor Mai suddenly asked Suchin, is there a chance that this white mouse could suddenly die? Suchin frowned slightly, and after a moment of thought, explained, it shouldn't. We have fully considered the effects on living organisms when designing the anti-gravity engine. Moreover, in previous simulations and theoretical analyses, we did not find any factors that could cause fatal harm to living organisms. He paused briefly and continued, before conducting the anti-gravity field test. We performed comprehensive health checks on the white mouse to ensure it was in good condition. Additionally, during the test, we will have professional monitoring equipment to track the mouse's physiological indicators in real time, and if any abnormalities are detected, we will immediately stop the test. Suchin's gaze was firm and confident as he continued. Furthermore, we have conducted multiple rounds of low-intensity field tests without observing any abnormal reactions from the mouse. Therefore, under normal testing conditions, the possibility of the mouse suddenly dying is extremely low. Mai nodded and added to Suchin's statement, however, scientific research always involves a certain degree of uncertainty. Even you cannot completely rule out the occurrence of unexpected situations, which is also the purpose of this test, right? Suchin calmly smiled and replied, yes. From Suchin's words, it was clear that this test was quite rigorous and necessary. Meanwhile, the staff was closely monitoring the mouse's physical condition using professional equipment. Various sensors and monitoring instruments displayed fluctuating data, recording the mouse's vital signs. The crowd's gaze shifted back and forth between the mouse and the monitoring devices, filled with tension and anticipation. When they discovered that the mouse's vital signs were all normal, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, Suchin was not satisfied with the status quo. He then instructed his assistant, increase the load power to the maximum. Chapter 173, The Concept of the Sky City. Suchin knew that only by setting the anti-gravity engine's power to maximum could they truly test its performance under extreme conditions. Therefore, he decisively instructed his assistant to set the power of the anti-gravity engine to its maximum. Everyone watched the reaction of the white mouse with tension. Its cries became more intense, as if protesting against the sudden powerful force. There were also abnormalities in its vital signs, with a particularly rapid heartbeat. The experts noticed the unusual signs and began to worry. The vital signs of the white mouse seemed a bit off. Could it be in trouble? Prior to this, there had been no breakthroughs in the research on anti-gravity, and it was akin to crossing a river by feeling for stones. Any situation could arise. They whispered among themselves, discussing potential scenarios and response measures. However, one individual remained remarkably calm. He analyzed coolly. It was likely that the white mouse had not yet adapted to this situation, which is why it seemed so agitated. Once it adapted, everything should return to normal. Sure enough, as he had predicted, about 15 minutes later, the white mouse gradually calmed down. It seemed to have begun adapting to this mysterious force field, no longer panicking. Its vital signs returned to normal. This eased the worries of everyone present. At the same time, the power of the anti-gravity engine reached its peak, and the white mouse was unharmed, indicating the success of the biological test. As they looked at the now calm white mouse, their hearts were filled with emotion. The biological test had no issues. Did this mean the test was a complete success? It was hard to believe that they had truly developed an anti-gravity engine that had been repeatedly validated without problems. When the day came for it to be successfully applied, the entire world would undergo tremendous changes. Perhaps this individual would change the world once again. Everyone was incredibly excited. At that moment, Professor Maijinja suddenly said, "There is still a gap between a white mouse and a human." With that, he decisively took off his research suit, indicating he wanted to personally test it. This decision left others very concerned about his safety. They urged him, "Professor Mai, this is too dangerous. I don't think it's necessary to take such risks." But Professor Mai shook his head firmly and said, "In scientific research, we must have a spirit of adventure. If we don't try it ourselves, how can we truly understand the impact of the anti-gravity field on humans?" This spirit inspired the other individual as well. He said earnestly, "Professor Mai, I will start testing from the lowest power level, and if you feel any discomfort, please let us know immediately." Professor Mai nodded and then walked into the force field with determined steps. The moment he stepped into the force field, he felt an unprecedented wonderful sensation. So this is what the anti-gravity field feels like. It's truly amazing. His body slowly lifted, and he felt no tension at all. On the contrary, he was filled with curiosity and a desire to explore. As the power increased continuously, the range of the force field expanded, and Professor Mai floated higher and higher. The other individual looked up and asked if Professor Mai felt any discomfort. Professor Mai smiled and replied, "No, except for a bit of acrophobia." Everyone burst into laughter, and the tense atmosphere was instantly relieved. Soon after, as the power reached its limit, there were no issues with Maijinja's vital signs. This indicated that the test was truly a success. Professor Maijinja excitedly said, "This anti-gravity engine is simply amazing. Our research has really made a significant breakthrough." Other experts, seeing that Professor Mai was safe and sound, were also filled with curiosity. They expressed their desire to experience the sensation of anti-gravity. Consequently, the laboratory was filled with the childlike laughter of the experts. One by one, they stepped into the force field to experience the wonderful feeling brought by anti-gravity. Professor Maijinja donned his research suit and approached Su Chun, asking, "Previously, dozens of tons of space mechas could easily float. What is the load capacity of this anti-gravity engine?" Su Chun pondered for a moment and then replied seriously, "Around 1 million tons." Upon hearing this number, both Maijinja and the experts in the weightless state were utterly astonished. They suddenly realized that this anti-gravity engine could be used to support aerospace motherships. A million-ton aerospace mothership, that would be a spectacular sight. They seemed to envision a magnificent scene in the future sky, where enormous aerospace motherships soared freely propelled by the anti-gravity engine. At that moment, Maijinja suddenly proposed an idea. What if the range of the anti-gravity engine could be large enough? Wouldn't that mean we could build a city suspended in the air? This could greatly alleviate the problem of overpopulation. A sky city. This idea immediately captured everyone's attention. A city built in the air, that's something only seen in television novels. Could it really become a reality? I also want to see what the aerial city would look like. They looked towards Su Chun, eager for his response. He calmly smiled and said, "In fact, the aerospace mothership can completely be transformed into a city in the future. The so-called Sky City is entirely possible to realize." With the renowned anti-gravity expert, the chief designer of future aerospace motherships, Su Chun, saying this, the experts were filled with excitement and joy. They exclaimed, "Incredible! Comrade Su Chun might really change the world." At that moment, in a certain intelligence agency's headquarters, Smith, as usual, struggled to open his eyes in the morning sunlight. He got up and walked to the washroom, where his reflection in the mirror showed dark circles under his eyes like ominous clouds, having gone another night without sleep. Mechanically, he picked up his toothbrush and began his daily routine, but the anxiety in his heart grew wildly like weeds. Just then, his wife walked over, her gentle gaze immediately drawn to the white hair on his head. She gently reached out and plucked a prominent white hair. Smith winced in pain and abruptly turned around, glaring at her. The pressure valve seemed to open at that moment, releasing the long-suppressed stress all at once. As he turned his head, he noticed his wife holding a strand of white hair, looking at him with deep concern. In that moment, all of Smith's anger dissipated. Chapter 174. The Dragon Kingdom is quite capable. His wife was startled by Smith's earlier expression and quickly approached him, extending her hand. "Dear, what is going on with you lately? Your white hair is increasing, and you seem to be under a lot of stress. Are you hiding something from me?" Smith looked at the white hair in his wife's hand and forced a smile, comforting her. "You're overthinking it. I've just been a bit sleepless lately." But his wife persisted. "There must be a reason for the insomnia. Should we go to the hospital for a checkup? I'm really worried about you." Smith waved his hand helplessly. "It's fine. I know my own body. I'm just a bit busy and tired from work." Suddenly, As if remembering something, Smith said to his wife, "By the way, if you have nothing going on, could you tidy up the house? You wanted to experience living away for a while, right? I've been thinking that I shouldn't get too caught up in work. It's also important to return to family life sometimes. Perhaps we could find time to start a journey living away." His wife's eyes lit up with excitement upon hearing this, and she immediately replied, "Dear, you're amazing. I completely support your return to family life. I didn't expect you to finally come around. I should reward you for this." With that, she gently lifted the hem of her nightgown, revealing a tempting look. Smith shrugged. After hastily wiping his mouth with some water, he unbuckled his belt. After a passionate encounter, Smith tidied himself up and headed to the office. The atmosphere here was filled with tension and busyness, with every decision potentially affecting the course of international affairs. As soon as he sat down, his assistant quickly approached him, holding a list. "Boss, I have followed your instructions and dismissed or reassigned these individuals." Smith took the list and examined it carefully. The list contained key personnel from a certain agency, and more importantly, they were individuals aware of the misleading plans. Smith nodded slightly, satisfied with his assistant's efficiency. "Bob, you did well. No wonder you're my top aide," Smith said, calmly handing his assistant a document. "This is for you." The assistant joyfully accepted the document, thinking it was some sort of reward. However, when he saw the content of the document, the smile on his face instantly froze. It was actually a reassignment notice. "Mr. Smith," he said, confused and full of questions. Just moments ago, he had been called a top aide, and now he was being reassigned. What does this mean? Smith looked at his assistant and said earnestly, "Don't think too much. I believe this position has more prospects than your current one. I specifically applied for it for you. You can't always be my assistant. You're still young. It's time for you to develop in a broader place. I believe you are capable of handling this job." The assistant, though reluctant, could only agree helplessly and turned back to their workstation to pack up. Smith carefully examined the list, then took out a lighter and ignited it. Watching the flames burn, Smith fell into a daze. In the flickering light, the silhouette of a combat mech appeared, reminiscent of a specter. It was a weapon of future warfare, possessing immense destructive power and mobility. Shortly after, the image of an electromagnetic cannon on a strategic vessel emerged, its terrifying power comparable to that of nuclear weapons, instilling fear in anyone who beheld it. The silhouette of an aerial mothership also flickered in and out, massive and imposing, like a moving fortress in the sky. An aerial mothership? Smith was jolted back to reality, frightened by the earlier vision. Sweat beads had unexpectedly formed on his forehead. No, it's impossible. There was no way that the nation could construct an aerial mothership. They lacked the capability. Absolutely not. He tried to reassure himself, though his voice trembled slightly. During this time, he felt he was being driven to the brink of collapse. The thought that the recent technological explosion in that nation might very well be a consequence of his own actions filled him with panic. Who would have thought that the conceptual blueprints he once presented to them would actually be built? Those designs, which seemed so far-fetched, were gradually becoming a reality on their land, which was simply terrifying. Especially the electromagnetic cannon, whose powerful capabilities shocked the entire world. Its emergence had completely altered the landscape of naval warfare, becoming a thorn in the side of many. And now, the conceptual blueprints for the aerial mothership had also been sent there. It was already too late to retrieve the materials. If they managed to produce it again under the previous circumstances, he would truly be a sinner in their eyes. Smith fell into deep contemplation, struggling to understand how they achieved this. In his impression, while they had always been developing, their technological level had remained somewhat behind. However, now they seemed to have awakened like a slumbering dragon, rising with astonishing speed. Their scientists appeared to possess boundless wisdom and creativity, capable of turning seemingly impossible concepts into reality. Had they made contact with extraterrestrials? How many years had their technology been developing? It made our scientists seem utterly incompetent. No, it was likely that extraterrestrials were helping them. It had to be. At this moment, Smith began to spiral into wild thoughts. He simply could not attribute the technological explosion to their own advancements. Just then, a subordinate reported that a certain high-ranking official had come to see him. Upon hearing this news, Smith instantly felt uneasy. Why would they seek him out at this time? Could it be that the situation had been exposed? It shouldn't be. Although the official knew about the deceptive plan, they were unaware that the electromagnetic cannon was also part of that scheme. It couldn't be concluded that it was their fault. As he pondered this, the door was pushed open. Secretary Jack appeared before him. Upon seeing the secretary, Smith instinctively tensed up. Fortunately, he was professionally trained to remain calm in any situation, so he didn't show any signs of distress. In this situation, it seemed best to wait and see how things would unfold. Chapter 175, A New Destruction Plan Inside the Imposing Building of the Agency. The secretary walked steadily towards Smith's office, his mind calculating significant plans. As he entered the room, he immediately noticed Smith's slightly unusual expression. The secretary furrowed his brow slightly, feeling a twinge of concern, thinking that Smith might be unwell. "What's wrong, Mr. Smith? You don't look so well," Smith quickly explained, pointing to the air conditioning above and chuckling awkwardly. "It's nothing, just that the air conditioning temperature is a bit high." The secretary frowned slightly, sensing that Smith's explanation was merely an excuse. However, he didn't press further, as he was focused on more urgent matters at hand. "I heard that there have been frequent personnel changes recently, with many being dismissed or reassigned." The secretary's words broke the brief silence. Smith was startled. He hadn't expected the secretary to be so well informed. Steadying himself, he responded, "It's normal for personnel changes in the agency. After all, in our department, we must always be vigilant against the emergence of internal spies. I worry that employees staying in one position for too long could lead to issues." The secretary replied thoughtfully, "Let us hope so." Seizing the opportunity, Smith inquired, "I heard you've been quite busy lately, bringing in many experts in the energy sector. Is there a major initiative underway?" The secretary's lips curled slightly, revealing a hint of a mysterious smile as he said, "You truly are sharp in the intelligence field. However, it would be even better if you could focus more on foreign affairs." Smith detected the sarcasm in his words, but had no way to refute it. After all, due to their mistakes, significant errors had been made, for which he bore considerable responsibility. To ease the awkward atmosphere, Smith shifted the topic, asking about the secretary's purpose for visiting. The secretary's expression turned serious as he said, "I'm here regarding energy. The president hopes that the agency can fully cooperate in disrupting the global energy market." Smith was taken aback by this bold plan. Disrupting the global energy market? Is that something we can actually do? He thought to himself. But he knew that before considering feasibility, he needed to understand the purpose behind such actions. Just then, the secretary clapped his hands. A confident-looking man, resembling an expert, walked in, his eyes gleaming with arrogance. The secretary introduced him. "This is Dr. Josen, an expert in the energy field. He and his team have made significant achievements in energy research, and they are considered a world-class expert team." Then, the Secretary of State said triumphantly, "Our country's strengths are not just military. Our wealth, technology, and expert teams are unparalleled in the world. What can that other nation compare with us?" Hearing this from the Secretary of State, Smith already understood that this plan was likely aimed at that other nation. Sure enough, the energy expert spoke up. Clearing his throat, he confidently said, "After our in-depth analysis these past few days, we have discovered a fatal weakness in that nation's energy sector. We might be able to exploit this weakness to suppress them." "A fatal weakness?" Smith asked eagerly. "What weakness is so fatal?" The energy expert explained. "It's their energy structure. Through our research, we found that they need to import a large amount of natural gas and oil every year. It's no wonder. Even though they claim to have vast resources, their large population means that domestic energy reserves simply cannot support the consumption of over 1 billion people. And they can only rely on imports. If we can cut off their energy supply routes, they will lose their momentum for development and will no longer be able to compete with us. It might even trigger internal chaos." It seemed that the thought of internal turmoil in that nation excited Dr. Johnson, causing him to emit a cackling laugh. The Secretary of State chimed in. "Exactly. Although they have advanced combat mechs and powerful warships, all of these require energy. As long as we cut off their oil and gas supplies, no matter how advanced their weapons are, what can they do? They will still be easily controlled by us." Hearing this, Smith suddenly realized. He hadn't expected that. Despite being slightly weaker militarily, they would think of controlling that nation from other aspects. This was not just a military confrontation, but a competition of comprehensive national strength. "How did you come up with this idea?" "It's brilliant." Smith seized the opportunity to flatter them. This praise delighted the Secretary of State. "To be honest, to find their weaknesses, we gathered hundreds of expert teams and conducted uninterrupted research on their intelligence data for a month. We also know we can't wait any longer. You know, their technology is experiencing exponential growth. We worry that one day they might create something even more terrifying. After our persistent efforts, we finally achieved promising results." At this point, the Secretary of State felt like crying. He had been under considerable pressure during this time. If they knew that the cause of their predicament was merely a university student from that nation, they would probably be devastated. Smith was quite supportive of this idea. However, he still had some concerns. He worriedly asked, "If we are to implement this plan, we must ensure that those desert countries cooperate. After all, they are the largest energy exporters. But now they have become friendly with that nation and no longer listen to us like before. What should we do about this?" The energy expert suggested, "Why not let the representative handle them? With our advanced weapons, dealing with those technologically backward countries should be easy, right? I believe it's necessary to send them some weapons to ensure the success of our plan." Upon hearing this, Smith realized that this so-called energy expert was unaware of the international situation. He shook his head in resignation and said, "What about the representative? He has been beaten down by the desert countries. They are probably the least likely to listen to us now." The energy expert was momentarily taken aback, confused about how the representative could be beaten down by those countries. Of course, it was about the mech suits. This was classified information that the energy expert was not privy to. At that moment, the Secretary of State snorted, "No matter. We have our own strategies." Smith was somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected the Secretary of State to have an idea. "So you can persuade those desert countries to help us?" Smith's eyes widened slightly, his voice tinged with disbelief. He fixed his gaze on the Secretary of State, who smirked slightly, revealing a cold smile that seemed to hide endless calculations. "We don't need to persuade them. We have our own plan to cut off the energy exports from the Dragon Country. We don't necessarily need to persuade those countries." As he spoke, a cold smile appeared on the Secretary's face, chilling like a winter wind. He slowly revealed the shocking plan. "We only need to destroy the oil country's gas pipelines and oil wells, and that will be enough." "What? You actually plan to destroy their gas pipelines and oil wells?" Smith was stunned by this plan. His mind went blank, as if time had frozen at that moment. This was absolutely a madman-esque scheme. he thought to himself. He knew that anyone sent to carry out this task would almost certainly not return alive. And did the other party want them to send operatives? A wave of intense unease surged within Smith, and he began to doubt whether the Secretary of State had lost his mind. Moreover, in his view, this move was akin to inflicting 1,000 casualties on the enemy while harming oneself by 800. Mr. Jack, don't forget, we are also a major energy importing country. Destroying their gas pipelines and oil wells will plunge us into an energy crisis as well. This will inevitably affect our domestic energy supply. Do you want taxpayers to turn against you? Smith said urgently, trying to make the Secretary of State understand the dangers of this plan. His voice trembled slightly, filled with tension and worry. However, the Secretary of State appeared confident, his eyes reflecting a sense of control, as if everything was under his command. These are not issues. In fact, we have already stockpiled a large amount of oil in advance. We just need to wait a few months, and we can exhaust the Dragon country. How is it? Our plan is quite impressive, isn't it? The Secretary of State spoke with pride, as if he could already envision a scenario where the neighboring country found itself in trouble under this plan. Madman. Absolutely insane. Smith felt even more shocked after hearing the Secretary's words. He never expected the Secretary to be so reckless, willing to sacrifice his own country's interests to achieve his goals. But there was nothing he could do. In front of the Secretary, he had no right to argue. He could only force himself to nod. While his heart was filled with helplessness and worry, the Secretary noticed Smith's reaction and smiled with satisfaction. In that case, it seems you'll have to work hard. His tone was casual, as if this was merely a trivial task. Smith's heart tightened, and he quickly asked, "What do you need us to do?" His voice carried a hint of tension. He had no idea what kind of challenges awaited him. Collect intelligence and simultaneously send people to execute this plan. The Secretary's words were concise and clear, but they sent Smith's heart sinking. Smith was stunned. He never imagined the Secretary would want them to both gather intelligence and execute this crazy plan. While collecting intelligence was part of their duties, to also have them carry out this damned plan was something Smith strongly resisted. Although the agents were highly professional, this was a mission with little chance of survival. Were their agents to become expendable? Smith's heart was filled with anger and helplessness. He felt the Secretary's decision was too hasty. The Secretary noticed Smith's apparent reluctance and sneered, pulling out a document from his briefcase. The document was none other than the presidential assignment letter. The content was simple. The CIA was tasked with implementing the plan. Upon seeing this document, Smith found himself at a loss. He knew that in the face of a presidential order, he had no room for resistance. Smith could only reluctantly agree, his heart heavy with bitterness. He understood that if this plan failed, it could bring unimaginable consequences. But what could he do? He could only obey the orders and do his utmost to complete this arduous task. The Secretary was visibly excited, as if he could already see the neighboring country falling into difficulties under this plan, at their mercy. He even began to fantasize about making excessive demands of the neighboring country, believing they would comply. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority. Neighboring country, this ancient nation that has lasted for millennia, don't think you'll ever have a chance to turn the tables. The hawk has always preyed on the rabbit. You will ultimately be under our control. After the Secretary left, Smith gathered more than a dozen of his agents. The team leader, named Shroud, was a battle-hardened veteran who had participated in desert warfare. He possessed keen insight and counter-surveillance capabilities. With him leading, there was no task that couldn't be accomplished. The other agents were also elite individuals, trained under his guidance. They are the core strength of the organization. At this moment, they gathered in Smith's office, all eagerly anticipating the upcoming mission. "Boss, we saw Mr. Jack on the way here, and he seemed particularly happy. Is it related to our upcoming task?" An agent suddenly asked. As soon as he finished speaking, he was met with a stern critique from Schlatter. "Rick, what have I taught you? As an excellent agent, you shouldn't ask questions that are better left unasked. Give yourself 10 slaps." "Yes, teacher." In the quiet office, the sound of Rick slapping his own face echoed. The other agents were unfazed, but Smith felt quite emotional. These are all precious talents cultivated by Schlatter. The next task made him feel somewhat at a loss for words. Schlatter noticed Smith's unease and calmly spoke. "Boss, this mission seems a bit difficult." "It's okay. Just go ahead and say it. The rest is up to us." Smith replied with a wry smile. "Schlatter, you really are perceptive. The task I'm handing over to you is not just difficult, but a matter of life and death." Schlatter's lips curled into a cold smile. "No problem. My team and I enjoy playing hide and seek with death." Smith chuckled lightly, no longer conflicted, and immediately handed the mission briefing to him. Schlatter took the document, examined it carefully for a moment, and the smile on his face froze. After a long pause, he murmured, "It seems this time, we have nowhere to hide." However, even so, he still smiled at Smith, remaining confident. "It's all right. What if death is blind?" Chapter 177. Did you carry the nuclear reactor over? Meanwhile, Suchin successfully completed the testing of the anti-gravity device, and the results were very satisfying. The experts present were deeply moved. They looked at the anti-gravity engine with intense enthusiasm. Some experts even wanted to change their research direction to explore the future applications of the anti-gravity engine. They were truly shocked, so much so that it had a huge impact on their decades-long research. At this time, the person in charge of the Eternal Day project hurried over. After greeting everyone, he turned to Su Chun. "Chief Engineer Su, as per your request, the construction of the nuclear fusion reactor has been completed. I believe we can now enter the second phase of the nuclear fusion reactor construction. Professors like Mai Jinzhe were filled with confusion and asked one after another, what does the second phase mean? Their eyes turned to the already completed nuclear reactors, filled with astonishment. To them, these reactors had clearly been completed, and the anti-gravity device was functioning properly. Could there be any finishing work left? But this shouldn't even be called the second phase of work. Su Chun explained with a smile. The purpose of these two nuclear fusion reactors is to power the anti-gravity engine. Since the anti-gravity engine needs to be equipped on the aerospace carrier, naturally, these two nuclear fusion reactors must also be transported to the aerospace carrier. Hearing this, the experts all turned their gazes toward the two towering reactor units, momentarily stunned. How would they transport these? Su Chun confidently stated. This is part of the second phase of the work, to transform these two nuclear fusion reactors into mobile units. What? Mobile reactors? This statement left Professor Mai Jinzhe and the other professors bewildered. It was the first time they had heard of such a term. Mai Jinzhe quickly remarked. This presents quite a challenge. He explained. Not only does it require high-precision control equipment and advanced monitoring systems to adjust the reaction rate in real time and prevent runaway reactions, but the reactor must also operate under different environmental conditions, which further complicates reaction control. For example, during transportation, it could be affected by vibrations and temperature changes, necessitating the design of special protective and stabilization systems to ensure the safety of the nuclear reaction. It also needs to have seismic resistance and proper radiation protection, among other challenges that are simply unimaginable. The other experts nodded in agreement. They were all researchers in nuclear physics and understood the potential issues with mobile reactors very well. They felt this was nearly impossible. At least with current technology, it seemed completely unfeasible. Their eyes were all fixed on Su Chun, eager to see how he would respond. However, Su Chun calmly smiled and replied, none of these are problems. We already have a comprehensive plan. Additionally, it's worth mentioning that during the initial manufacturing phase, we considered the transportation issue of the nuclear reactor, so we implemented a modular approach from the start, allowing the reactor to be disassembled into individual modules. Upon hearing Su Chun's words, the experts were immediately astonished. They thought, it can be done this way? Unless one had a profound understanding of reactor manufacturing, it would be impossible to come up with such an idea. Everyone couldn't help but admire him, acknowledging him as a pioneer in nuclear fusion technology. Such innovative thinking. At that moment, someone asked, the manufacturing facility for the aerospace mothership isn't here. Do we need to transport these units there? Su Chun nodded and replied. They need to be transported to the Southern Military District. As soon as they heard south, everyone realized that transportation would also be an issue. Given the complex terrain of the country, even if the two fusion reactors could be disassembled into modules, transportation would still pose a significant challenge. An expert expressed concern. However, Mai Jinzhe smiled and said, for our country, this isn't too big of a problem. We have extensive experience in transporting large items. We basically build roads through mountains and bridges over rivers. Wind turbine blades are quite large, yet they can still be transported normally. As long as we plan and coordinate properly, transportation shouldn't be too difficult. After hearing his explanation, everyone nodded, realizing that it seemed indeed feasible. Yet Su Chun waved his hand and said, there's no need for that. We can directly use space mechs for transportation. Upon hearing this, everyone present turned to look at the giant mech guarding the research institute. The space mech is large and powerful, seemingly a great labor force. Someone muttered. This thing's size is an advantage, but right now, it seems inconvenient to show it to others. Looks like it has to be transported at night. However, Su Chun responded, no need, just fly a bit higher and place the transport trajectory in space. Everyone was stunned. What? Transporting in space? Isn't that too sci-fi? The experts present were momentarily speechless, but soon they reacted. After all, this is a space mech, and achieving transportation in space doesn't seem like a big deal. They no longer worried about exposing the mech. The more they thought about it, the more they felt Su Chun was capable of anything. In the entire world, it seemed that only one nation could achieve such a feat. Soon, Su Chun authorized them to carry out the second phase of the modification work. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye, and the nuclear fusion reactor modification was successfully completed. This once again shocked the experts. They didn't have time to ask Su Chun for details when they saw him piloting the space mech leaving. Behind Su Chun, there were 4 mechs, all equipped with modular nuclear fusion reactor devices. Su Chun, holding an anti-gravity engine, headed to the shipyard. Outside the shipyard, Zhao Lao had been waiting for a long time. He asked the general, how does Su Chun plan to arrive? The subordinate replied, Chief Engineer Su said he plans to fly over. Zhao Lao nodded, thinking he would come by airplane. He needed to go to the airport to meet him personally. However, at that moment, he suddenly saw 5 light spots appearing in the sky. Soon these light spots became clearer when their shapes emerged. He was astonished to find that they were 5 space mechs. Zhao Lao quickly realized, damn it, he really did fly over. When Su Chun landed and walked out of the cockpit to greet Zhao Lao, the latter's gaze fell on the items on the mechs. He raised an eyebrow and asked Su Chun, kid, what are those things on the mechs? They look quite advanced. Su Chun smiled. Old man, you have a good eye? He pointed to the items and said, these are all nuclear fusion reactors. Upon hearing this, Zhao Lao was taken aback. What? Nuclear reactors? You brought nuclear reactors here? Zhao Lao's eyes widened in disbelief. Nuclear reactors can be transported? This is truly unheard of. His voice trembled slightly, clearly shocked by the news. Su Chen appeared much calmer, smiling as he explained, Zhao Lao, we modularized the nuclear reactors, making transportation quite simple. That doesn't seem simple at all, thanks to the space mechs. If other countries were to handle such matters, they might find themselves in a tough spot. Looking at the massive space mechs, Mr. Zhao furrowed his brow and expressed his concerns again. You just came over like this, isn't the target too big? We can't be spotted, right? Although the nation is now strong enough not to worry about secrets being exposed, being cautious is always wise. Moreover, the space mechs are still their trump cards. They definitely shouldn't be revealed easily. Su Chen confidently replied, it shouldn't be a problem. We're taking the space route. Space route? What does that mean? Mr. Zhao asked, puzzled. He simply couldn't imagine how a nuclear reactor could be transported via space route. Su Chen pointed to the space mech in the sky, and in the next moment, Mr. Zhao suddenly understood. Oh, I see. These are space mechs, capable of roaming in space. Mr. Zhao felt a wave of realization. He truly had overlooked this aspect. Su Chen continued to explain, to be precise, it's not entirely a space route. I'm worried that the mechs might be spotted by satellites in space. So it's not exactly a space route, but rather a murky atmospheric layer between the planet and space. Mr. Zhao was slightly taken aback, then couldn't help but admire. You really are clever. His respect for Su Chen grew even more. In fact, if it were just the space mechs heading to the Southern Sea, it wouldn't be complicated at all. After all, the space mechs can become invisible. They can fly through the air without worrying about being detected. However, the nuclear reactor modules cannot be made invisible. If only they could conceal items alongside them. That would be too sci-fi. Su Chen's approach of having the space mechs take the space route is undoubtedly the most prudent method. At this moment, Mr. Zhao's curiosity was fully piqued. He looked at the two modularized nuclear fusion reactors and couldn't help but ask, so what are these two nuclear reactors for? Su Chen patiently explained. The aerospace mothership is massive and requires a lot of energy. The main component consuming this energy is the anti-gravity engine. These two nuclear reactors are primarily for powering the mothership's anti-gravity engine. Anti-gravity engine? What is that? Mr. Zhao was completely unable to keep up with Su Chen's thoughts at this point. He felt as if he had entered a world filled with mysterious technology. Su Chen smiled slightly and said, that's the core component of the aerospace mothership. Whether the mothership can take off relies entirely on the anti-gravity engine. Mr. Zhao was taken aback for a moment, realizing how it all connected. At this point, Su Chen was filled with anticipation. By the way, Mr. Zhao, how far along is the research on the aerospace mothership? He turned to inquire about the progress of the mothership's construction. He had been busy with the Eternal Day plan and the anti-gravity engine lately. The construction work for the aerospace mothership had been fully entrusted to Mr. Zhao. After all, the blueprints and technology had all been provided to the nation by Su Chen. With the capabilities of the researchers from the Dragon Nation, creating an anti-gravity engine is impossible. But constructing the framework for a space carrier is not too difficult. Unless there are insurmountable challenges, Su Chen would only step in then. However, all this time, these researchers have been quite professional, leaving no opportunity for Su Chen to intervene. Mainly, they have done a thorough job in the preliminary work. Therefore, Su Chen has never been very clear about the progress of the space carrier's construction. Old Zhao chuckled and even teased, you little rascal. You've been acting like a hands-off manager lately. Why don't you take a guess at what stage our space carrier construction is at? Su Chen pondered for a moment and replied with a smile. It should have completed the basic framework by now. Old Zhao laughed. Who do you think you're looking down on? Now that you're here, it's time for you to take a look. Come with me, and you'll find out how far along we are in the construction of the space carrier. After saying that, he led Su Chen to a massive manufacturing base. From a distance, the manufacturing base resembled a giant mountain forged from steel, towering majestically. Its vast area and enormous outline created a breathtaking skyline. The exterior of the base was covered with a layer of sturdy protective coating, which appeared a deep, dark blue, exuding a mysterious and powerful aura. This coating not only had excellent impact resistance, but also effectively withstood various harsh environmental conditions. This manufacturing base was approved for construction after the implementation of the space carrier project. Due to the significance of the task, the Dragon Nation once again showcased its prowess in infrastructure. Tens of thousands of workers and thousands of engineers were directly involved in the construction at this base. In less than a month, this massive manufacturing base was completed. As Su Chen entered the base, a person in charge came over and greeted them warmly. Chief Engineer Su. Old Zhao, you're here. Old Zhao introduced with a smile. This is Su Zheng, the execution head of the space carrier project. Come on, Xiao Su. Show Chief Engineer Su our construction progress. He said we only built a framework? Su Chen twitched his mouth slightly, glancing at the old man beside him. You old rascal. Can you say that in front of outsiders? The person in charge smiled and looked at Su Chen. Chief Engineer Su, this will surprise you. Please come this way. Then, he led Su Chen and Old Zhao further inside. At this moment, a group of researchers also entered, greeting Old Zhao one after another. As the head of the Dragon Aviation manufacturing base, Old Zhao held a high status in the minds of these people. However, they inadvertently overlooked the young Su Chen. They assumed Su Chen was Old Zhao's secretary. The person in charge then pointed at Su Chen and introduced, this is our chief engineer Su, the overall head of this project. Upon hearing this, everyone was taken aback. They widened their eyes, staring at Su Chen as if looking at an unbelievable existence. So young. and seeming like a student, yet he's the overall head? Chapter 179. People make others feel inferior. It is often said that heroes emerge in their youth. And this really opens my eyes. Could it be that he has connections? Whispers. Do you think this is just any position? How could someone with connections become the head of military industry? Incredible. At my age, I was still busy with my studies in university. While he is already a chief engineer. People make others feel inferior. The crowd murmured quietly. Soon, they all greeted Su Chun. Su Chun also simply acknowledged them, and then, under the guidance of the person in charge, they walked inside. After passing through several stringent security checks, they finally entered the manufacturing base. Su Chun was immediately astonished, as if he had entered a paradise. It was narrow at first, but after walking a few dozen steps, it opened up to a vast area. Inside was truly a different world. The central passage was spacious and bright, with alloy walls on both sides exuding a cold, gleaming sheen. In the production workshop, giant robotic arms were precisely assembling components, while researchers focused intently on operating sophisticated instruments. The research laboratories were quiet and mysterious, with scientists dedicated to experimenting with new materials and optimizing weapon designs. The mini-zones were filled with a sense of technology. But that wasn't Su Chun's most immediate impression. His most direct feeling was that it was very large. Quite large. Exceptionally large. And what caught his eye the most was the aerospace carrier. The hull was made of high-strength alloy materials, shimmering with a mysterious metallic luster, both incredibly tough and full of a sense of technology. The smooth lines seemed sculpted by the forces of the universe. Under the illumination of the manufacturing base's lights, the surface of the aerospace carrier glowed with a faint halo, as if enveloped by a mysterious energy shield. Advanced navigation and communication equipment were installed along the edges, with signal lights flashing continuously like stars in the night sky. At this moment, the magnificent aerospace carrier stood quietly within. From the exterior, it seemed that the framework of the aerospace carrier had been completely constructed. It appeared there was even more to it. Old Zhao suggested they go inside for a look, and Su Chun was momentarily stunned, somewhat surprised. Then, under the guidance of the person in charge, they proceeded inside. Now Su Chun was completely amazed. Not only was the framework done, but even the interior had been completed. The central control room, cockpit, conference room, employee lounge, and so on, all these places were built perfectly. Compared to the drawings he provided, they were virtually identical. Old Zhao proudly stated, the main structure has been completed. He then asked Su Chun, what do you think? Not just the framework is done, right? Su Chun stammered, unsure of what to say, and finally blurted out 2 words, impressive. This speed truly astonished Su Chun. For the first time, Old Zhao saw a look of shock on Su Chun's face, and the old man felt immensely pleased. With Su Chun's approval, Old Zhao couldn't stop smiling. This made them feel involved too. Otherwise, always being led by Su Chun would make them seem useless. Just then, 2 middle-aged men walked over in their direction. It is not difficult to see from their expressions that they are in a hurry. We have discovered some major issues that urgently need to be reported to you. One of the 2 researchers said nervously. The 2 staff members looked anxious, their eyes revealing deep concern. At this critical moment, they even overlooked Su Chun and Zhao Yong. The person in charge tried to keep them calm and said, what is the problem? Don't rush, take your time to explain. One of them spoke up urgently. The construction of the aerospace mothership is nearing completion, but we have just discovered that there is a missing critical propulsion system. The other quickly added, the propulsion system and energy system are interconnected. Not only is the propulsion system missing, but we can't manufacture the energy system either. For the sake of confidentiality in the manufacturing process, the blueprints they obtained were separate. While focusing on their own tasks, they thought there was a department responsible for the manufacturing of the energy and propulsion systems. As a result, just when the aerospace mothership was about to be completed, they suddenly realized that no one was handling the energy and propulsion systems. The positions for these systems on the aerospace mothership are still vacant. Without the energy and propulsion systems, isn't it just a beautiful but useless toy? They had invested countless efforts and hard work into this project. And now they were facing such a huge problem. Their words hit the person in charge like a heavy hammer. His expression instantly became serious as he realized the gravity of the issue. One of them suggested, let us contact the chief engineer and have him take a look. The blueprints can't possibly have defects, right? Or is it that this part of the technology hasn't been developed yet, which is why it's left empty? I can't believe that such a major plan would be handled carelessly by the chief engineer. But in any case, it's safer to have him come over. The person in charge was momentarily taken aback and then said, the person is already here. The 2 were also stunned, then looked at the 2 individuals beside Su Chun. When their gaze swept over Su Chun and finally landed on Zhao Yong, their expressions were filled with surprise. Sir, you are still an engineer? You are the chief engineer of this project? The 2 were taken aback, clearly not expecting such a layer of identity behind Commander Zhao. If that is the case, it would indeed be a remarkable combination of both literary and martial skills. But they couldn't help but think that besides Su Chun and Zhao Yong, there was only a young guy left. He can't possibly be the chief engineer, right? The reality was indeed surprising. Zhao Yong, somewhat embarrassed, pointed at Su Chun and said, what are you talking about? He is the chief engineer of this project. The corners of Su Chun's mouth twitched slightly as he helplessly thought, do I really not look the part? The 2 were utterly shocked, their eyes filled with disbelief. At this moment, their heads were buzzing, as if thunder was rolling in their minds. The chief engineer is actually a student? The chief engineer is so young? Although I thought the chief engineer was not an ordinary person, I didn't expect him to be so extraordinary. He looks just like a college student. With this appearance, isn't Su-Chin just a student? In fact, he really is a college student right now. But he doesn't go to classes. Otherwise, attending lectures would only add pressure to those teachers. With Su-Chin's current theoretical level, who could teach him? Su-Chin cleared his throat, introduced himself briefly, and then calmly explained, the energy and propulsion systems are not just empty. These two systems are crucial and were organized and manufactured by me personally. The two were taken aback, filled with doubts and concerns. Can you do this alone? This is the most challenging part. Su-Chin shrugged. In fact, it's already been taken care of. Already done? Now, the two were completely stunned. Chapter 180. Invincible in the world, the energy and propulsion systems of the aerospace carrier are undoubtedly the two systems with the highest manufacturing difficulty. A 100,000-ton aerospace carrier has exceptionally high requirements for its propulsion and energy systems. It can even be said that as long as these two systems are solved, it would be possible to infinitely manufacture interstellar warships weighing under 100,000 tons. And such a highly challenging system has already been completed. This statement brought a huge psychological impact to the two researchers. Su-Chin continued, I have completed the manufacturing of the propulsion system, and I have also built 2 nuclear fusion reactors as the energy system for the aerospace carrier. Old Zhao then realized, those things you sent over were actually the propulsion and energy systems for the aerospace carrier. No wonder. Now, the two could no longer maintain their composure. They were filled with shock and admiration. In other words, not only has he built the energy and propulsion systems, but he also delivered them to them. The efficiency is astonishing. They now believe that this young man might truly be the chief engineer of the aerospace carrier. His ability and efficiency are terrifying. At this moment, the two's attitudes noticeably became much more humble. One of them asked Su-Chin, Chief Engineer Su, could you tell us what the propulsion system of the aerospace carrier is like? To be able to suspend a 100,000-ton aerospace carrier, it must be an extraordinary propulsion system. We are all very curious about how you achieve this. The two researchers were clearly much older than Su-Chin, yet they were able to ask questions without shame, showing great scholarly qualities and demeanor. Su-Chin patiently answered his question. It is a gravity control engine. Currently, the only known technology capable of supporting the aerospace carrier is the gravity control engine. The two were astonished, their eyes sparkling with excitement. You actually developed a gravity control engine? Is this real? Su-Chin calmly stated. In fact, it has already been tested. The test results were quite good. The generated force field is sufficient to make the aerospace carrier float. The admiration that the two felt for Su-Chin was beyond words. They could only exclaim, you are truly remarkable. Seeing their astonishment, the elder Zhao was somewhat surprised. Is the anti-gravity engine really that impressive? One of them excitedly explained, of course it's impressive. The anti-gravity engine is still in the theoretical exploration stage. No, to be precise, it has already been broken through by Chief Engineer Su. But before this, it only existed in science fiction novels. If it weren't for Chief Engineer Su's proposal to build the space mothership, we wouldn't have dared to believe he could actually create an anti-gravity engine. The core of the space mothership is the anti-gravity engine. Without the space mothership, it's possible, but without the anti-gravity engine, it absolutely won't work. We could even say that with the anti-gravity engine, we could easily manufacture space battleships. As he spoke, he looked at Su-Chin with admiration, saying, of course, all of this needs to be carried out under Chief Engineer Su's leadership. These researchers also understood that without the blueprints and technology provided by Su-Chin, they would not be able to manufacture space battleships at will. Thus, all of his assertions were inseparable from Su-Chin. After hearing their explanation, Elder Zhao and the person in charge finally understood the power of the anti-gravity engine. It was not only the core of the space mothership, but also the fundamental core technology for building their future space fleet. Elder Zhao felt deeply moved. Luckily, Su-Chin was born in this country and was so sincere. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this moment, the person in charge took the opportunity to ask Su-Chin a question. Chief Engineer Su, since the space mothership is a carrier platform, do you have plans to produce carrier-based aircraft in the future? If so, I think now is the perfect time as the space mothership project is nearing completion, and we can start the manufacturing of carrier-based aircraft. Su-Chin calmly explained, that won't be necessary. In fact, what we are producing is not carrier-based aircraft, but carrier-based mechas. After saying this, he emphasized, in fact, the space mecha is the carrier-based mecha of the space mothership. Everyone was taken aback, especially Elder Zhao. Little Su, the space mecha is the carrier-based mecha of the space mothership? This is simply invincible. He knew the power of the space mecha. A single space mecha could easily destroy an entire Air Force squadron. With full combat capability, dealing with an entire Air Force wouldn't be a problem. And the space mothership equipped with such mechas would certainly possess terrifying combat power. And this wasn't even the limit of the space mothership. Su-Chin smiled calmly. What is this? In the future, electromagnetic naval guns can also be considered for equipping the space mothership, and in a surrounding configuration. Surrounding configuration? Elder Zhao could no longer contain himself. The space mothership is so enormous. Wouldn't that mean thousands of guns? Thousands of electromagnetic naval guns. If the enemy were to come, they would have to admit, this is quite a spectacle. Not only that, Su-Chin also mentioned, in the future, artificial intelligence will be equipped for the space mothership. Achieving intelligent control. Elder Zhao's mind conjured up the image of the space mothership. The elderly man, having lived for over 60 years, felt as if there was a surge of passion igniting within him. He spoke candidly. With these systems in place, the combat capability of the aerospace mothership would undoubtedly see a significant enhancement. It would be unmatched in the world. Haha. His excitement was contagious to everyone present. Although they didn't fully understand the space mechas or had limited knowledge of electromagnetic naval guns, it was clear from the seasoned elder's reaction that the combat power of the aerospace mothership equipped with these systems would be astonishing. They were increasingly looking forward to the day of its trial run. After checking the current progress of the aerospace mothership, the elder led Su Chen back to his office. With the completion of the aerospace mothership imminent, he had some thoughts he wanted to share with Su Chen. After taking a sip of the fine tea personally poured by the elder, Su Chen asked, "Elder Zhao, feel free to ask whatever is on your mind." Elder Zhao smiled and said, "Actually, it's not a profound question. I'm just curious." He hesitated for a moment, but eventually continued, "So kid, if this aerospace mothership is completed in the future, who will it belong to?" "It will definitely belong to our nation." Su Chen answered without hesitation. Elder Zhao clicked his tongue. "Of course it belongs to our nation. Such a treasure can only belong to us. But what I meant was, who will it be assigned to? The Navy or the Air Force?" Hearing this, Su Chen burst into laughter, nearly doubling over. "Why are you laughing?" "I've been losing sleep over this question for several nights." Elder Zhao exclaimed. "You need to tell me your thoughts." In fact, Elder Zhao had indeed been troubled by this issue for days and was eager to discuss it with Su Chen. The Air Force has the space mechas, and the Navy has the warships, but where does the aerospace mothership fit in? Is it with the Air Force or the Navy? If it were equipped in the Navy, that would be one thing, but if it were in the Air Force, it might be a thankless task. Although it's all for the country, Elder Zhao was particularly fond of this aerospace mothership. In a somewhat petulant tone, he added, "Anyway, I believe that since it has ship in its name, it should belong to our Navy." However, as he spoke, Su Chen noticed that Elder Zhao's confidence seemed somewhat lacking. "What lack of confidence?" Elder Zhao huffed, narrowing his eyes and grinning. Su Chen smiled back. "Elder Zhao, I'm not teasing you. I actually have an idea." Elder Zhao eagerly asked, "What idea? Hurry up and tell me." Su Chen calmly replied, "You see, the operations of the aerospace mothership are not limited to ground and air, they also encompass space. In fact, the main battlefield for the aerospace mothership in the future will likely be in space, designed to address potential space warfare. So, I suggest we consider re-establishing a space fleet. What do you think?" Su Chen's proposal struck Elder Zhao like a boulder hitting the calm surface of a lake, stirring up waves of astonishment within him. He stared wide-eyed at Su Chen, completely stunned. "Goodness, when I asked whether you belong to the Navy or the Air Force, you suggested upgrading to a space fleet." Su Chen said calmly, "We already have space mechs, and soon, the space aircraft carrier will be completed. At that time, who in the world can compete with us? Let those guys deal with their own matters. We will conquer the universe directly. Just imagine. The resources of any planet will sustain us for decades. Therefore, Mr. Zhao, we need to broaden our perspective." As Su Chen spoke, he gestured with his fingers, explaining the importance of expanding one's vision. His words were filled with ambition, which excited Mr. Zhao as well. "So, are you saying that one day I, an old man, could conquer the universe?" Su Chen smiled in response. "What are you talking about, my dear captain? How old are you? This is the perfect age to take risks." Mr. Zhao burst into laughter at Su Chen's words. "Ha ha ha, you little rascal, stop flattering me." But the joy in his heart was hard to conceal. "All right, I think you're absolutely right. Once our space aircraft carrier is built, who would still care to fight with those guys? The future applications of the space aircraft carrier look promising, and there's great potential ahead." Mr. Zhao became increasingly excited, as if he could already see the glory of the future space fleet. "And not only can we mine resources from outer planets, but we can also farm there," said the farming enthusiast Zhao Yong with a smile. Excitement shone in Mr. Zhao's eyes. "Just thinking about farming makes my blood boil. When that time comes, we will set the rules. There are so many planets. We should choose the best ones for ourselves and leave the bad ones for others." Su Chen continued on Mr. Zhao's thought. "But the bad planets might still have good resources. Perhaps we should leave the ones we've exhausted for them." Mr. Zhao laughed heartily. "We are indeed too kind-hearted. Even thinking of leaving them some scraps." Su Chen chuckled as well. "Who says otherwise?" Mr. Zhao grew more excited, already plotting the future of the space fleet. He immediately expressed his intention to discuss this with Mr. Qin Zhengwo, who holds significant military power, second only to the top leader. Mr. Zhao wanted to share his thoughts on establishing a space fleet. However, Su Chen advised, "No need to rush." Mr. Zhao shook his head repeatedly. "We must act quickly. If someone else brings it up first, it will be too late. We can also take this opportunity to propose that I take charge of the space fleet." As he spoke, a look of pride appeared on his face. Su Chen gave him a thumbs up and teased, "Old man, it has to be you. You've been waiting for this. No wonder you're in such a hurry." Laughter echoed in the office as, at that moment, the captain of the space mech team responsible for the transport task approached Su Chen. "Chief Engineer Su, we have something to report." Su Chen paused for a moment. "What is it?" The captain said, "The anti-gravity engine along with the nuclear reactor has been delivered to the designated location." Hearing this, Su Chen knew it was time for him to return. He looked at old Zhao and said, "I will send someone over to assemble the nuclear reactor modules. As for the installation of the anti-gravity engine, that will be handed over to the shipyard. I will provide the relevant technology to the researchers at the shipyard later. Old Zhao nodded, indicating he understood. However, he was also a bit surprised. You can't just arrive and be ready to leave, right? Su Chen shrugged. I suppose so. Old Zhao insisted. It's been so long since we last met. We must have a meal together before you leave. He immediately instructed his subordinates to block the door, clearly determined not to let Su Chen leave. Seeing Old Zhao's enthusiasm, Su Chen felt it would be impolite to refuse. However, at that moment, the team leader spoke up. Chief Engineer Su, we've just received news from the Research Institute. They hope you'll return quickly. There's something important that needs your leadership. The project underway is the Eternal Day Plan, which concerns national interests. Su Chen couldn't afford to be careless. He understood the importance of the Eternal Day Plan. Old Zhao also recognized the urgency of the matter and ceased his attempts to keep Su Chen. Next time, we must drink to the point of inebriation. I'll save all the good wine for you, he said. Su Chen replied, definitely next time. As Su Chen prepared to leave in his mech, Old Zhao murmured, I wonder if it's too late for my useless son to have a granddaughter? Su Chen activated the stealth feature of his space mech, and his figure instantly vanished, as if he had never been there. The only sound that remained was the hum of the engine, signaling to everyone that he was still airborne. I'm off now. See you next time, echoed Su Chen's amplified voice in the air. Old Zhao waved at him, chuckling. You little rascal, next time you'll have to call me captain. Su Chen calmly smiled, no problem. With the roaring of engines, the space mech squad completely disappeared from sight. After Su Chen left, Old Zhao stood there, filled with thoughts. He imagined the magnificent scene of the future space fleet, his heart brimming with anticipation. Establishing a space fleet would be a decision of great historical significance. It would not only change the military landscape of the nation, but also pave new paths for humanity's exploration of the universe. Old Zhao understood that although this idea was bold, it was not beyond reach. With continuous technological advancements, humanity's exploration of the universe was deepening. The emergence of aerospace carriers and space mechs had already laid the foundation for establishing a space fleet. Su Chen's proposal made this goal even clearer and more concrete. Old Zhao decided to discuss this matter with Qin Zhangwo as soon as possible. He believed that Qin Zhangwo would also recognize the immense potential of the space fleet. In this era filled with challenges and opportunities, the nation needed a forward-looking strategic vision and the courage to take bold steps. Establishing a space fleet would be an important step towards national strength. Meanwhile, Su Chen piloted the space mech, swiftly heading towards the Research Institute. The Eternal Day Plan was one of his current top priorities, as it related to the nation's energy security and future development. He must return to the Research Institute as soon as possible to oversee important work. During the flight, Su Chen was also contemplating the future of the space fleet. He knew that establishing a space fleet was not something that could be achieved overnight. It required a vast amount of resources, technology, and talent. However, he believed that as long as there was determination and perseverance, this grand goal could certainly be realized. The dream of farming on distant planets seemed to be one step closer. Chapter 182. Successful Synchronization of Ignition. On a mysterious small island by the East Sea, the sea breeze gently brushed by, and the waves crashed against the rocks, producing a series of booming sounds. This place was designated as a national-level confidential base a year ago, and its importance was self-evident. The small island was close to an eastern naval base, where a powerful aircraft carrier fleet constantly guarded it, highlighting its special status. Any unidentified units approaching had the right to be directly destroyed by this fleet to ensure the absolute safety of the base. At this moment, experts including Mai Junja gathered here, their faces beaming with excitement, as if they were waiting for a significant historical event. Mai Junja occasionally gazed into the distance, filled with anticipation. He had received news that Su Chen was about to arrive, which shocked him. So fast, even if he took a plane. It shouldn't be this quick. From the time they called Su Chen back to his imminent arrival, it was barely half an hour. Could he really travel from the southern waters to the eastern coastal base in half an hour? This was simply unbelievable. His subordinates reported to Mai Junja that Chief Engineer Su was expected to arrive at the base square in 2 minutes. Mai Junja hurried to the square to wait, his heart filled with curiosity. How did Su Chen manage to arrive so quickly? As time passed, everyone's gaze focused on the sky. Suddenly, a point of light appeared in the sky, which grew brighter and brighter. When the shape of the light was fully revealed, Mai Junja finally realized that Su Chen was piloting a space mech returning. This thing was so massive, yet its speed was astonishing. Mai Junja marveled inwardly, thinking that he wouldn't need to take a plane anymore. After Su Chen landed, he exuded a calm and confident aura. He looked at Mai Junja and directly asked, "Is the Everyday project about to be completed?" Mai Junja shifted his gaze from the mech to Su Chen, nodding in response, except for the power generation module. Everything else is basically finished. I brought you here to oversee the first ignition experiment. This is the first test of the Matrix nuclear fusion reactor. Su Chen smiled calmly, with excitement gleaming in his eyes. It hasn't been easy. The Everyday project is finally nearing completion. At that moment, he suddenly recalled Mai Junja's earlier words about the power generation module not being finished. To ensure the Everyday project goes flawlessly, he immediately asked, "The power generation module is crucial, but the technical difficulty isn't high. It should be fine, right?" Mai Junja confidently replied, "There are no issues. It just requires some time for manufacturing and installation." After hearing this, Su Chen nodded with reassurance. Mai Jinja led Su Chun to the experimental site, and both of them felt particularly excited along the way. In the vast ocean, the nuclear fusion matrix power generation network machine stood like a steel deity. The main body resembled a towering giant, crafted from special alloys, shimmering with silver-gray light. The enormous dome at the top sparkled like a brilliant gem, made of transparent high-strength material, with intricate internal devices twinkling like stars. Above the dome, sensors and receivers were densely distributed, as if communicating with the universe. Surrounding the machine, a powerful magnetic field contained the plasma generated by the nuclear fusion reaction, with massive electromagnets guarding it like mythical beasts. When in operation, blue light illuminated the sky and ocean like a dazzling aurora, containing endless energy. The high-tech equipment and instruments inside emitted a unique charm. And the nuclear fusion reaction chamber resembled a burning sun, while the spherical reaction chamber, made of heat-resistant materials, clearly displayed the enormous blue energy released by the plasma within the magnetic field. The surrounding energy conversion devices and control systems resembled a precise magical array, transforming energy into electrical power for transmission. However, the power generation device was not yet complete and could not output electricity at this time. When Su Chen arrived at the testing site, all eyes were on him. Zhao Gang, the execution leader of the Eternal Day project, also approached Su Chen. Chief Engineer Su. Long time no see. Su Chen nodded. They had met before, and it was Zhao Gang who had helped with the 2 nuclear fusion reactors. Zhao Gang briefly introduced. We will start the ignition test shortly, and at that time, hundreds of matrix reactors across the country will respond. This will also help us determine if the matrix network of the Eternal Day project is functioning smoothly. Mai Jinja chuckled softly. Zhao, you don't need to explain so much to Chief Engineer Su. He knows better than we do. Zhao Gang then realized that Su Chun was the overall leader of the Eternal Day project, more familiar with the details than himself. He felt a bit embarrassed for over-explaining. Fortunately, Su Chen took it in stride and seriously inquired, have the checks been completed before starting the test? Zhao Gang nodded and replied solemnly. To facilitate the subsequent tests and ensure the Eternal Day project is foolproof, we conducted continuous and comprehensive inspections of all equipment a long time ago. Su Chen nodded, feeling a bit of his worries ease. Then, Su Chen prepared to conduct the ignition test. He walked to the control panel, opened the safety device for the ignition button, and, under everyone's watchful gaze, pressed the ignition button. As the button was pressed, a large amount of nuclear materials, deuterium and tritium extracted from seawater were slowly added to the nuclear fusion matrix power generation network machine, instantly enveloping the entire site in a tense yet expectant atmosphere. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the core area, which was about to trigger a significant change, their heartbeats quickening involuntarily. At the moment the laser igniter was activated, an extremely dazzling light flashed like lightning, and powerful energy rapidly concentrated at the center with astonishing speed. In an instant, the temperature skyrocketed like a rocket, reaching an astonishing 100 million degrees. At that moment, it felt as if the energy of the entire universe was compressed into this small space. The nuclear fusion reactor roared to life like a fierce beast awakened, unleashing a breathtaking power. The intense light and powerful energy fluctuations made the surrounding air seem to tremble. At the scorching center, the plasma began to slowly coalesce under the precise confinement of a super-strong magnetic field. The force of the magnetic field was like an invisible giant hand, gently yet firmly shaping the plasma into a stable sphere. This sphere emitted a mysterious and powerful glow, as if the core of the universe had been transported to the human realm. The dazzling colors and constantly pulsating energy made one feel as if they were in a fantastical world of technology. Witnessing this awe-inspiring scene, everyone was overwhelmed with excitement. Pride and joy radiated from their faces, and their eyes sparkled with infinite anticipation for the future. Some were so moved that tears filled their eyes, while others clenched their fists tightly, as if cheering for this monumental moment. Meanwhile, leaders from other regions began reporting their statuses. Their voices were filled with enthusiasm and excitement, each report sounding like a stirring melody for this grand technological feast. Successful ignition at the Kyoto Synchronization Point. Successful ignition at the Shanghai Synchronization Point. Successful ignition at the Shenzhen Synchronization Point. Successful ignition at the Guangzhou Synchronization Point. Chapter 183. Test successful, victory imminent. Each report echoed like a rallying drum, invigorating everyone's spirits. As they witnessed successful ignitions across various locations, the crowd couldn't contain their excitement, with cheers rising and falling. Has it worked? This means the nuclear fusion reactor matrix network can operate normally. However, something was still missing. Just then, they noticed something was amiss. Under the matrix network, the energy system had not fully activated. Everyone hurried to check, and upon closer inspection, they found that an issue had arisen in a certain region. Feedback from that area was delayed. Concern gripped everyone. The environmental conditions there were harsh, and fewer experts were involved in the construction of the nuclear fusion reactor, making it understandable that problems could arise. But time was of the essence, and a solution was needed quickly. Su Chun made a decisive call, organizing experts to swiftly analyze the problem and devise a solution. After a tense investigation and urgent repairs, the issue was finally resolved. Fortunately, it was not a major problem. Despite a slight setback, all reactors under the Eternal Day project's energy matrix network were activated. This also meant that the Eternal Day project was essentially a success. This portion had been the toughest challenge, and once resolved, it could be declared a success. Su Chen took a deep breath and announced loudly, "Ignition successful." The crowd erupted in cheers, embracing each other and shedding tears of joy to celebrate this hard-earned victory. Of course, as the overall leader, Su Chen played a crucial role. At that moment, the crowd suddenly surged. A middle-aged man in an administrative jacket approached, surrounded by a crowd. He was a representative sent from a certain region to assess the testing situation. He enthusiastically shook hands with Su Chen, his eyes filled with admiration. "Chief Engineer Su, I've long admired your reputation." He had heard that Su Chen was a young talent, and upon seeing him, he found that the rumors were indeed true. Truly impressive for such a young individual. Upon learning that the test was a complete success, the representative was even more excited. However, he wasn't very clear about the significance of the project, so he asked Su Chen, "Chief Engineer Su, what great significance does this project hold?" Su Chen smiled slightly, his eyes revealing determination and confidence. "This means that our nation may have access to unlimited energy." At this statement, the representative showed a look of astonishment. He remarked that unlimited resources seemed a bit far-fetched. Of course, he didn't question Su Chen's intentions. As someone with a background in science and engineering, he understood the law of conservation of energy. In his impression, unlimited energy was impossible. Mai Xinjia quickly explained, "That's because of the fusion reactor. Under the matrix of fusion reactors, we can obtain a continuous supply of energy." At this point, he glanced at Su Chen and then added meaningfully, "And this is still the preliminary phase of the fusion reactor matrix network." This statement not only surprised the representative, but also left the experts present in a state of confusion. What did a preliminary phase matrix network mean? Mai Xinjia looked at Su Chen, hoping he would provide an answer. Su Chen calmly smiled. He certainly understood what Mai Xinjia meant. However, he shook his head and said, "As for the second phase of the plan, there is no need to discuss it at this moment. The energy we are generating now is sufficient for us to use for hundreds of years. When the day comes that this energy is exhausted, we can then talk about the second phase." Some experts couldn't wait any longer. "Does that mean we won't live to see that day? We won't witness what the second phase is. Even if we can't see it, it would be nice to know. Chief Engineer Su, please don't keep us in suspense. Tell us what the second phase is." Looking at the eager expressions from everyone, Su Chen had no intention of prolonging their curiosity and slowly explained, "As you may know, due to time constraints, all the fusion reactors under the energy matrix of the Eternal Day project are mini-reactors. The so-called second phase actually involves transforming these mini-reactors into true fusion reactors." Mai Xinjia excitedly said at this moment, "Comrades, don't be fooled by how casually Chief Engineer Su puts it. You may find it hard to believe. A true fusion reactor produces energy that is dozens of times that of a mini-reactor. It contains tremendously powerful energy." At this statement, the entire room was in shock. Everyone's eyes widened as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. Dozens of times? The energy produced by mini fusion reactors was already quite formidable. The energy contained in a true fusion reactor was even more astonishing. At this moment, they realized that the incredibly terrifying energy output of the Eternal Day project was far from its true form. It would only reveal its real power after all the microreactors were transformed into true reactors. The commissioner couldn't help but express his deep feelings, considering the unpredictable changes in the energy market. The Eternal Day project has truly built a solid energy great wall for our nation. Please allow me to express my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of our country. This high-ranking commissioner from the capital, who rarely bowed down, now deeply bowed to everyone. Su Chen quickly said, "We are just shining and heating up in our own field. It's what we should do." After the commissioner stood up, he tightly wojula, Tadasho. "Although we all serve the people, some of us are served by others. While you contribute to the nation with your own strength, your efforts are evident, and the country will definitely not disappoint your hard work." His words greatly comforted the researchers. At this moment, someone suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked Su Chen, "Chief Engineer Su, does this mean that when the second phase begins, we will have to destroy and remake these nuclear reactors?" The thought of their painstakingly constructed energy great wall being destroyed one day left everyone feeling inexplicably melancholy. Mai Xinjia waved his hand with a smile, "You're overthinking it. Our Chief Engineer Su has already considered this point and has made arrangements in advance. The real nuclear fusion reactors can be upgraded based on the microreactors. When the time comes, we won't need to tear down these microreactors. We can directly upgrade them." "Oh my, that's so convenient," an expert exclaimed. A century later, if the descendants who modify the reactors knew they could upgrade based on microreactors, they would surely thank Chief Engineer Su for his foresight. After the ignition test passed, Su Chen stayed for a while longer to carefully collect some data. Not long after, he received a phone call. It was from the secretary of Elder Qin, and upon hearing what the other party said, Su Chen immediately furrowed his brows, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Chapter 184. Elder Zhao's small scheme is intercepted by Elder Qin. Not long ago, at the Qin residence, Qin Zhengwo looked at the stubborn old man in front of him with some surprise. "Zhao Yong, why are you, old man, not staying in the South China Sea? Why have you come to my side?" The person was indeed Zhao Yong. At this moment, old Zhao was savoring good tea and said with a smile, "What's wrong? It's been a long time since we last met, and a comrade misses you a bit. Can't I come over to visit you?" Elder Qin disdainfully glanced at him and said, "Miss me? Do you think I would believe your nonsense? Stop beating around the bush and just say what you want. Old Zhao grinned. In truth, he did miss Elder Qin, as they were once comrades in the same trench. But he also had business to discuss. Old Zhao introduced. Isn't the aerospace aircraft carrier about to be completed? I'm here to report some good news to you. Old Qin was somewhat surprised. His hand holding the teacup suddenly paused. He looked at Zhao Yong in disbelief. So soon. I remember when we were making the space mechas, it didn't happen this quickly, did it? Old Zhao explained. Su Chun developed many tools during the previous manufacturing work. This has significantly enhanced our country's construction capabilities. Naturally, the speed has increased. So that's how it is. Old Qin sighed. Su Chun truly is an unparalleled talent. I feel like he was sent by the heavens to help our country after seeing us struggle for so long. Old Zhao was slightly taken aback. You feel that way too? I sometimes think the same. After chatting for a while, Old Zhao returned to the main topic. Let's get down to business. Old Qin took a sip of tea. You go ahead. I'm listening. Old Zhao grinned and continued. The space mothership is nearing completion. Do you think it belongs to the Air Force or the Navy? Without hesitation, Old Qin replied. Of course it's for the Air Force. Is that even a question? Old Zhao's mouth twitched involuntarily. At this point, Old Qin also realized and looked at him with a smile. What's wrong? Are you reluctant? Old Zhao waved his hand, leaning back with a nonchalant look. It's all for our country. What's there to be reluctant about? Just look, the space mothership has ship in its name. I personally don't mind. But my subordinates will definitely have opinions. They've put in so much effort for the construction of the space mothership, only to end up dressing it up for the Air Force. Of course, I said, I feel it's all for the country, so I don't mind. Old Zhao reiterated once more. Old Qin couldn't help but smile broadly. All right, old man, I know you well. You say you don't care, but in your heart, you're more concerned than anyone. Hearing this, Old Zhao stopped pretending. All right, I won't pretend anymore. However, I didn't come here just to insist that the space mothership stays with our Navy. I have other matters to discuss. Old Qin gestured for him to continue. Old Zhao said, the space mothership definitely can't be limited to just the planet. It must head into space. Plus, with our space mechas now in mass production, I propose that we directly build a space fleet. These words took Old Qin by surprise. A space fleet. What a sci-fi term. Old Qin's biggest wish in the past was to witness the rise of the Navy. As long as the Navy could rise, he would feel satisfied. But now, he felt he might have the chance to witness the birth of a space fleet. The passion within him couldn't help but boil. Old Zhao noticed the excitement in his eyes and continued, Old Qin, to put it bluntly, how many years do we have left? Don't you want to see the magnificent sight of a space fleet lined up in space? Honestly, if I could see that once in my lifetime, it would be worth it even if I were to die immediately after. Old Zhao spoke with reason and emotion, well-versed in the art of persuasion. Moreover, we're not making this decision impulsively. Think about it. Our aerospace carrier is about to be completed, and we already have the onboard mechs. That kid Su Chun is even planning to equip the carrier with electromagnetic cannons. With this configuration, building a space fleet doesn't seem excessive, right? Moreover, once the space fleet is established, the morale of our nation will definitely see an epic boost. At that time, who would dare to infringe upon our country? I even want to live stream our space fleet to the world. Let those who doubt us see that our nation also has a day of deterring the universe. Elder Qin fell into deep thought, envisioning the magnificent sight of the space fleet soaring through the vast cosmos. It was an unprecedented shock, a grand vision that stirred one's emotions. He knew that this proposal was not merely a dream, but a significant decision that could change the fate of the nation. Elder Qin's fingers trembled slightly as he listened to Elder Zhao's depiction of the space fleet blueprint. However, he still had his doubts. Building a space fleet surely requires a lot of money, right? In the past 2 years, various mechs, cannons, and plans have emerged, and the nation has invested a substantial amount of funds. Although the space fleet would greatly enhance our national morale, it seemed unnecessary. With our existing weapons, we could handle global conflicts without much trouble. Elder Qin's words revealed a hint of hesitation. But ultimately, it still came down to financial concerns. Elder Zhao immediately countered. Old Qin, are you confused? Once the space fleet is completed, will you still worry about funding? Do you think the space fleet is just a mascot to be displayed? Do you know how many resources are available in outer space for us to seize? Enough for our country to transform into mining tycoons. Even without mining, we could grow food in outer space, making us incredibly wealthy. Elder Zhao's eyes sparkled with excitement, as if he could already see the endless wealth the space fleet would bring to the nation. Upon hearing this, Elder Qin seemed to be invigorated. What did you say? We can grow food in outer space? His voice was filled with surprise and anticipation. Elder Zhao confirmed, absolutely. With so many planets out there, I don't believe there aren't any suitable for growing food. Just find one that can. And we could support not just our country's billions, but even 100 times that. And for those young people back home struggling with marriage and housing, we can build homes for them in outer space. This move could resolve most domestic conflicts. It's a great benefit to the nation and its people. Old Qin, what are you still hesitating for? Elder Zhao's words were filled with ambition, igniting Elder Qin's enthusiasm. Elder Qin suddenly slammed the table, startling Elder Zhao. He decisively declared, let's do it. Damn it. The energy crisis is showing signs. You've made my blood boil. But you're right. The space fleet is too important. It must be built as soon as possible. Let's have Su Chun work hard. Who knows? One day we might even settle in outer space. Elder Qin's eyes were filled with determination and resolve. Old Zhao nodded in satisfaction, thinking to himself that it wasn't easy to convince this old fellow, and this was just the first step of his plan. Next, he was ready to reveal the ultimate goal. However, before he could say anything, a rather overly excited old Qin suddenly exclaimed, "Not only am I going to build a space fleet, but I also want to be the captain of the space fleet myself. I've fought against various adversaries, but I wonder if I'll have the chance to battle extraterrestrials." Old Qin's words were filled with a desire to challenge the unknown. Old Zhao was indeed taken aback. "If you're the captain, then what am I supposed to be?" He quickly replied, "Old Qin, you hold a high position and there are many military matters that need your leadership. How can you have so much energy for this? I think I should take on the captain role. I'm not afraid of hard work." But Old Qin was unyielding. "I've been in this position for too long. It's time for me to step back. I feel I would be very suitable as the captain." Old Zhao grew anxious. "The country needs you. Let me take the captain position." Old Qin stared at him, suddenly realizing, "Oh, so establishing the space fleet isn't your main goal. You're aiming for the captain position." There was a hint of teasing in Old Qin's voice. Old Zhao didn't hide it either. "What is wrong with wanting to be a captain after stepping down from being the naval commander?" Old Qin retorted, "I've stepped down from a higher position. Don't I have more qualifications to be the captain than you?" No one expected that these two influential figures, who could shake the whole nation with a stomp of their feet, would argue so passionately over the position of a captain. For a moment, neither was willing to back down. Just then, Old Qin's secretary walked in, bringing an important piece of intelligence. Seeing someone else enter, the two stopped their debate and returned to their previous calm demeanor. Old Qin instructed the secretary to speak about the matter. The secretary said solemnly, "Report, sir. The intelligence department has sent a message to both military and political sectors. The desert nation has now stopped selling oil abroad and has significantly raised oil prices, which has indirectly caused gasoline prices to skyrocket by several times." Old Zhao was stunned. Several times? How could this be? He took out his phone and saw that international oil prices had indeed surged several times. It was even possible to see news reports about people fighting over gasoline and other oil resources in various places. Moreover, there were rumors domestically that raised the prices of food and oil. Food and oil are the foundation of the nation. If someone dares to shake its foundation, the consequences would be severe. Fortunately, with the swift action of the government, the rumor-mongers were quickly arrested, and the rumors were soon quelled. However, the significant increase in international oil prices was a stark reality. Old Zhao frowned, feeling that something was amiss. What on earth was the desert nation doing? Did they not realize that this move would lead to turmoil in our country and even the entire world? How infuriating. Old Zhao's tone was filled with anger. Old Qin, however, was not as hot-tempered as Old Zhao. He sensed that the situation was certainly not simple. The secretary continued, "Indeed, there is a reason for this. According to intelligence, there have been issues with their oil wells, which is why they halted oil supplies." Elder Zhao asked anxiously, "What could possibly go wrong with an oil well? If there's a problem, can't they just fix it?" The secretary replied again, "It's not just one well, but rather several oil wells across the entire desert region that have encountered issues." At this, both Elder Zhao and Elder Qin were taken aback. They sensed a hint of conspiracy in the air. Elder Qin furrowed his brows at this moment. "The energy issue is critical. With our large population and numerous enterprises, we are highly dependent on energy. If things go wrong, it could lead to chaos in our country. What should we do?" Elder Qin frowned, contemplating a strategy. Elder Zhao calmed down and said, "Don't panic. Have you forgotten about the Eternal Day plan? Su Chen mentioned that the plan could provide us with a large amount of energy, which might alleviate this crisis." Elder Qin, however, expressed doubt. "That can't be possible. While I trust Su Chen's abilities, with over 1 billion people and hundreds of thousands of companies in our country, the energy consumption is enormous. Can the Eternal Day plan supply energy for an entire nation? Even if it can ease the energy strain based on our current resources, I think that would be good enough." Elder Zhao was also uncertain. "How about we give Su Chen a call and ask for his opinion?" Elder Qin pondered for a moment and decided to have the secretary call Su Chen. "This matter is significant. It's good to hear Su Chen's thoughts." The secretary indicated that there was more intelligence to report, but Elder Zhao interjected, "Just tell Su Chen directly." Elder Qin had no objections. Su Chen's intelligence level is very high. There's no need to keep things from him. When Su Chen received the call and found it was Elder Qin's secretary, he immediately became serious and asked, "What important matter do you have for me?" He had been at the Research Institute in the East Sea, fully immersed in his work, and was not very aware of external circumstances. The secretary detailed the situation to Su Chen. The oil wells in the desert country had encountered problems. This news left Su Chen stunned, feeling a strong sense of shock. I wondered why things fell off lately. The people at the Research Institute were reluctant to drive. Even saying things like the desert country has gone crazy. He pinched the bridge of his nose, realizing that he had become so absorbed in research that he almost fell out of touch with current events. He quickly took out his phone to check the news. Sure enough, it was just as the secretary had said. International oil prices were skyrocketing. The domestic market was also affected. The energy situation was extremely dire, and there were already places around the world experiencing unrest. The secretary then added, "Our intelligence indicates that not only is the desert country in turmoil, but even the region over there has reports of suspicious individuals attempting to sabotage their natural gas." Su Chen was once again taken aback. Even that region is involved? However, who are these people bold enough to provoke even them? If they get caught, it would be quite a situation. The secretary continued to relay the intelligence. In fact, they have indeed been captured by that region. However, those guys are clearly well trained, and no matter what kind of torture they used, they couldn't extract who sent them. Upon hearing this news, Su Chun said without hesitation, "It's likely the work of certain foreign entities. They can't compete with us openly, so now they're resorting to underhanded tactics." Old Zhao was also furious and gritted his teeth. What benefit do they gain from destroying the oil wells in the desert nations? They have numerous industries and rely on energy even more than we do. Isn't this a move that harms themselves as much as it harms the enemy? This was also a question that lingered in Su Chen's mind. The secretary continued, "The higher-ups also believe it's the work of certain foreign entities. We have intelligence indicating that before this incident occurred, they were secretly acquiring energy resources. They even drove up energy prices significantly." Hearing this, they could basically confirm that it was indeed those foreign entities pulling the strings behind the scenes. "Chief Su, I am calling you not only to inform you of this crucial intelligence, but also to hear your thoughts. We all know you are executing the Eternal Day plan, but our Elder Qin doesn't have a deep understanding of this plan. We are unsure if it can handle this crisis," the secretary inquired. Su Chen pondered for a moment and replied, "I can answer your question, but first, I need to know how much longer our domestic energy can sustain us." Chapter 186. The real show is about to begin. Upon hearing Su Chen's question, Elder Qin and Old Zhao decisively called the Energy Department. Director Wang Chongling of the Energy Department was currently overwhelmed, frantically deploying measures to stabilize domestic energy supply and demand. Just then, an assistant approached him. "Director, your phone." "It's the Southern Naval Commander, Chief Zhao Yong." At this point, Wang Chongling had already answered 800 calls. He was even required to report to the capital. Hearing that Old Zhao was calling, he was puzzled since he had no direct connection with Zhao Yong. Especially upon learning that the other party was inquiring about how long domestic energy could last, the energy director broke into a sweat. He nervously said, "It can probably last about 6 months. After that, we'll have to rely on our reserves. Moreover, it's unstable. We can't achieve a full supply. At least a third of the industrial sector will have to shut down." Old Zhao was astonished. "Our country is vast in resources, and energy can only last 6 months? The energy director helplessly responded, "How long has our country really been developing? We know it's not good to rely on foreign sources, but we are also in the process of transitioning. Now we want clear skies and GDP. We are at a loss. If we want to supply the entire country, then we can burn coal. We have plenty of coal. However, even so, 6 months won't yield enough coal to supply the entire nation. There will also be fluctuations during that period." Old Zhao understood. "So, to ensure normal operations domestically, we can only last a maximum of 6 months." The energy director confirmed, "That's correct." After that, Old Zhao hung up the phone. The energy director was left bewildered by Old Zhao's decisive style. Not knowing what was going on, there was no time to think further, so he quickly called in a group of subordinates to continue the energy deployment. Su Chen also learned that the country could maintain stability for at most 6 months. At this moment, Elder Qin felt the crisis approaching. If energy prices were maintained, they would inevitably fall into a passive position in this energy war. On the other hand, if energy prices were raised, it would lead to turmoil domestically. Elder Zhao signaled for his secretary to ask Su Chen if he had any solutions. Su Chen firmly stated, "Maintain domestic energy prices to stabilize the economy and people's livelihoods." Elder Qin and Elder Zhao were taken aback by Su Chen's words. If that were the case, at most in 6 months, the domestic energy reserves would be depleted, and the country would definitely face problems. Elder Qin asked, "What should we do then?" Su Chen confidently replied, "Don't worry. The Eternal Day Project reactor has already completed its ignition test. Soon the country will have nearly unlimited energy." Upon hearing this, Elder Qin, Elder Zhao, and even Elder Qin's secretary were all shocked. Elder Zhao even picked up the phone to directly ask Su Chen, "Kid, is what you said true?" Su Chen was momentarily stunned, puzzled about how Elder Zhao was with Elder Qin. But he quickly understood, a smile appearing on his face. He said, "Elder Zhao, everything I said is true. Moreover, the energy produced by the Eternal Day Project is enough for us to use for hundreds of years. If the country needs it, I can also organize the modification of the nuclear reactor, and then the energy output could multiply several times. Do you still not believe me? Believe it. Who wouldn't he believe you?" Elder Zhao laughed excitedly. He felt that while others might not believe, he certainly believed Su Chen. This kid had created too many astonishing feats. Each one was a historical marvel. Now with Su Chen's words, Elder Zhao felt reassured. In his heart, Su Chen was the cornerstone of the nation. As long as he stood strong, the country's fortunes would not falter. After hearing Su Chen's words, Elder Qin also breathed a sigh of relief. The tension on his face gradually dissipating, and he remarked, "What a false alarm. This kid Su Chen always manages to bring us hope at critical moments. With him around, our nation has confidence." After experiencing this sudden energy crisis, the hope for resolution brought a heavy stone off Elder Qin's heart. The secretary, however, was a bit confused. He looked at Elder Qin and Elder Zhao with a puzzled expression, unable to understand why a simple remark from Su Chen could make these two big shots believe so wholeheartedly. In his mind, doubts arose. Could they be just bragging? Why are these big shots so naive? They believe everything. He truly couldn't comprehend the unreserved trust that Elder Qin and Elder Zhao had in Su Chen. Although Su Chen was confident in helping the country through this energy crisis, He did not intend to be easily manipulated. After pondering for a moment, he said, Elder Zhao, we absolutely cannot let them take advantage of us. I suggest we gather some evidence of their underhanded dealings and send it to the desert countries. These guys are not to be underestimated. We have provided the equipment, and I believe they will definitely surprise some people later. Su Chen's words revealed a hint of cunning and decisiveness. He knew well that in this global energy game, one cannot merely react passively. It is essential to take the initiative and disrupt their plans. Upon hearing his words, Elder Qin smiled and said, this kid is getting bolder, but I like it. Who says only they can act against us while we can't fight back? A glimmer of light shone in Elder Qin's eyes. He agreed with Su Chen's proposal. On the international stage, one cannot always be on the defensive. It is necessary to demonstrate one's capability and wisdom at the right time. Elder Qin picked up the phone again and assured Su Chen, don't worry, Su Chen, I will arrange for someone to handle this. His tone was resolute and powerful. He decided to act swiftly, gathering evidence as per Su Chen's suggestion and providing intelligence support to the desert nations. He understood that in this complex energy war, uniting all possible forces to counteract their schemes was crucial. Moreover, he believed that if the desert nations knew who was behind the underhanded actions, they would undoubtedly be furious. That would be enough to make them regret it. With Elder Qin's decision, a secret operation quietly commenced. The intelligence department began to gather evidence of any wrongdoing in the oil well incidents involving the relevant parties, while the diplomatic department actively communicated with the desert nations to lay the groundwork for future cooperation. After hanging up the phone, Su Chen called Lu Qingji to inquire about the production of individual combat mechs. Learning that nearly 1,000 units had already been manufactured, Su Chen smiled with pride. This storm was initiated by them. They would have to bear the consequences. The real show was about to begin. Chapter 187. The Angry Desert Nations. In the vast and boundless desert, the sun hung high. The scorching sunlight relentlessly baked the earth. This mysterious and challenging region is home to numerous nations that rely heavily on oil resources. At this moment, many desert nations, except for one, gathered closely due to an unexpected crisis. Prince Odbao, a young leader who had previously excelled in military plans against the aforementioned nation, was now subtly becoming the latest leader of the Desert Alliance. He stood tall, with determination and wisdom reflected in his eyes. Dressed in a traditional desert robe, which fluttered gently in the breeze, he stood in a makeshift conference center surrounded by high-level representatives from various countries, the atmosphere tense and serious. Prince Odibao's expression was grave. He understood the severity of the crisis. His voice was steady and powerful, breaking the silence. Everyone, we are now facing a common predicament. Only by standing together can we possibly overcome this crisis. How much have you lost in the oil wells? Let's be open and honest about it. The representative from the Pyramid Nation spoke first, slightly lowering his head with a worried expression. Respected Prince Odbao, our country has 10 oil wells that are experiencing problems. The destruction of these oil wells has dealt a heavy blow to our economy. We are already facing turmoil domestically. The chief from Baidi Nation followed up. We also have 15 oil wells that have been damaged. Prince Odbao then spoke. The situation in our country is even more severe, with 27 oil wells destroyed. The senior officials from Kralai Nation expressed their anger. Is that all you have? We have 44 oil wells that have been damaged. This is intolerable. We must find the mastermind behind this and make them pay a heavy price. As the representatives from various countries spoke, Prince Odibao's expression grew darker. He angrily slammed his fist on the table, causing it to tremble slightly. Who on earth did this? Why would they do such a thing? The representatives shook their heads in helplessness. Although we have captured several individuals responsible for the destruction of the oil wells, these people are highly skilled and tight-lipped. They refuse to disclose anything. Even when subjected to inhumane punishment, we could not extract any information from them. Prince Odbao furrowed his brow, contemplating the next course of action. He said, since we cannot get anything from these individuals, we can investigate their identities. Perhaps starting from their identities will lead us to some clues. The senior officials from various countries replied, we have naturally investigated, but these individuals' backgrounds are extremely mysterious, making it impossible to start. They seem to have appeared out of nowhere, and there are no leads to trace their information. Everyone fell into deep confusion and anger. Having had so many oil wells destroyed, they still didn't even know who was responsible. Prince Odbao was filled with rage. He wanted nothing more than to eliminate those responsible. However, he also understood that killing them would only amount to a few lives lost and would not compensate for the tremendous losses. At this moment, a senior official from the Pyramid Nation proposed a speculation. Could it be one of the nations like Longhua, Maoxiong, or others? Prince Odbao immediately dismissed this speculation. It cannot be Longhua. They would not resort to such dirty tactics. I trust them. The other senior officials frowned. Although no nation is entirely virtuous in the face of enormous interests, they also felt that Longhua would not engage in such actions. Moreover, Longhua is one of their largest energy suppliers. Such actions would bring them no benefit and could potentially trigger turmoil within their own country, which would be counterproductive. The chief from Baidi Nation then speculated, could it be Maoxiong? Prince Odbao also felt it could not be them. We have intelligence that several natural gas pipelines in Maoxiong have also been destroyed. They have suffered significant losses. For the already economically strained Maoxiong, this is like adding insult to injury, so it shouldn't be them either. The chief expressed doubts about their involvement. Recently, We even received a loan request from a certain country. After this incident, they indeed suffered significant losses. It seems that the motivation from the European region is not very strong either, as their natural gas is primarily imported from that country. If they were the ones to destroy the gas pipelines, they would also face a harsh winter, leading to domestic unrest, which would ultimately be detrimental for them. The chief's analysis was quite professional, alleviating suspicions about these nations. At this moment, everyone's attention turned towards another major energy-importing nation. Prince Odbo hesitantly remarked, could it be them? Although they have vast resources, they do not exploit them, instead choosing to import from others, treating their domestic resources as reserves. Once global energy resources are depleted, they would then exploit their own reserves. However,